baby food samples. Scientists have called for a complete ban on these chemicals, as they are known to be highly toxic to children's developing brains, even at very low levels of exposure. They are indeed associated with reduced IQ, delayed motor development, and learning disabilities. They have also been shown to harm bees and birds and aquatic organisms like fish. 10 of the pesticides found in the baby food sold at Target are linked to endocrine disruption. Incredibly, small amounts of endocrine disrupting chemicals like, let's say the equivalent to one drop in 20 Olympic pools, well, that can alter brain development, hormones, the immune system, and much more. There are some dots to connect here, and these are dots that you will not hear most newscasters talk about. So listen carefully. We have a corporate giant of the retail industry, Target, which also is one of the largest corporate financiers of, wait for it, baby butchering Planned Parenthood. And shockingly, we now find out that Target is actively involved not only in the killing of babies inside the womb, but apparently engages in poisoning babies outside the womb with the products they're selling. Now, the question is, do they know this? Well, they should now, because we do. So for those of you who are not aware, the Defender, which reported this story, is the news organ of the Children's Health Defense Fund, a project of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. In fact, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. recently gave up his presidential bid and agreed to support the candidacy of Donald Trump. He was all but run out of the Democrat Party, and now we can see why. While RFK Jr. is not the pro-life political figure that we wish he would be, RFK Jr., as we know, is a staunch supporter of abortion rights. But he is strongly and passionately in favor of preserving babies who are, well, lucky enough to make it out of their mother's womb. As a Democrat nowadays, you must be 100% apparently pro-death, whether it's unborn babies or born babies or pushing euthanasia on the sick and elderly. They just as soon, I guess, kill them all. Apparently anything less will get you booted from the Democrat Party. Well, that does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in and supporting the broadcast. Hey, folks, with all the garbage in our food, I got to ask the question, if you're not taking something to offset all that's in the environment, our water and our food, why not? Do you want to end up in the medical industrial complex? I don't think you do. So you need to do something to offset what's in our food supply, just like I do. What I do, I take 3 things every day. One of the things I take every day is Bella Grace, loaded with 3 powerful ingredients, including tons of antioxidants. And this is astaxanthin. It crosses the brain-blood barrier to take on those free radicals. You can find out more and get a subscription to that elixir, Bella Grace, right at the website, melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Again, melissahousebg.com. Then I would highly recommend you swish every day with Numi. Numi contains glutathione. That detoxes your cells. And again, there's an awful lot in the environment, our water, and our food that is really dangerous to our long-term health. You need to be detoxed. You need to detox your cells. Glutathione is a natural occurring molecule in your body, but sadly starts to decrease around the age of 20. In fact, some studies show that glutathione may remove mercury from the brain and help prevent things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's, okay? So go to neumi.com/house1 if you want more details. neumi.com/HOWSE and the number 1, neumi.com/house1. And then do what I do. Every night, Melissa brings me this little green drink. It's called Gatatana. Gatatana is a plant, like a plankton that occurs in the ocean. Whales eat it and grow the size of school buses. In fact, in 1 scoop of Gatatana, there's the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. And this gets right into your bloodstream, loaded with all kinds of important fatty acids and proteins. Again, there's a lot of science behind this as well, and I mean a lot. Check it out at bluegenics.com/Melissa, bluegenics.com/Melissa. Check it all out. These are all ways that you can support us, all right? And then, of course, go to worldviewtalk.com. Find out about how to get your own free satellite phone with a very reasonable monthly plan of text and talk. They have a device there called a Bivy. You can sync that to your cell phone and communicate via text through a satellite should the power grid go down or cell towers. They have solar generators, cell phones where they do not store your data, bulletproof backpacks, purses, and more. It's all there at worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Thank you for supporting us in these ways. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.
This is Brandon House Live. Whether the issue is law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, government, or national security, Brandon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brandon House.
And good evening. Welcome to the broadcast on this Friday night, September 20th, 2024. September 20th, 2024. My guest tonight is Colonel Rob Maness. We are going to talk about this book, Nuclear War, a Scenario, that I read lots of last weekend. It is by Annie Jacobson, and she tells us an awful lot, things that I think many Americans ought to know, and sadly, we don't know so many of these important things that I think we should. Well, we have the distinct honor of having as a regular broadcaster with us every day at 2 o'clock Central, Colonel Rob Maness. He knows an awful lot about nuclear war and preparedness. He knows many things that he cannot talk about. Some of the things that I'm going to ask him about, he's going to have to try to be very careful so that he doesn't, say more than he should. And he may even have to say, I can't answer that. I cannot, I don't know, I don't know, can't confirm, can't deny, neither can confirm or deny, whatever the old saying is. So we're going to be sensitive to that. He may have to say that to us. But man alive, a guy that has been there, knows exactly what Annie is writing about with a strategy or a scenario, as she lays out in her book, of a nuclear missile, ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, coming toward America from North Korea, and how the different places throughout the United States would respond. I asked the team last weekend if they would build for me a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. I gave them a long list of things that I wanted pictures of to show you, our viewing audience, and to ask Colonel Rob Maness about. You're going to get a lot of education tonight, my friends, and you may want to watch it again when we post it at worldviewtube.com, and you're certainly going to share it with your friends. Now, before we get started and bring on the Colonel, I think it's very, very important that you first understand our guest here, who is the host of his own show each and every day, 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern at worldviewtube.com. You need to understand his background, his bio, because it gives us so much credibility with the conversation we're about to have. Let's go to the screen. Here it is. During his military service, Colonel Maness led numerous combat operations, including as a bomber squadron commander in Enduring Freedom and Iraq Freedom. Colonel Maness served as an enlisted bomb disposal technician in 3 assignments countering terrorism before being commissioned and selected for flight training. As a Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, did you guys just hear that? As a Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, he was on duty in the National Military Command Center. Wait a minute, where was he on duty? The National Military Command Center. Now that's interesting because that is one of the facilities that is talked about right here in Annie's book. And here he's serving in this. Wow. And we get the chance not only to hear from him every day as a host, but ask him questions tonight. Not all of them, which he's going to be able to answer. I mean, he could, but he's not allowed to. So this is quite an opportunity. So as a Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, he was on duty in the National Military Command Center located within the Pentagon during the September 11th, 2001 attack. In the ensuing months, he directly assisted the United States National Security Team with creating, synchronizing, and executing the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. Colonel Maness authored the first theater nuclear war plan and designed decision-making tools for the Presidential Nuclear Decision Handbook, strengthening U.S. extended strategic deterrence policy in Europe and Pacific regions. You understand what's being said there is he helped work on the manual that goes with the nuclear football that follows the president everywhere. Colonel Maness served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing, conducting strategic battlefield intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations against America's enemies. He went on to command Kirtland Air Force Base, Albuquerque, New Mexico, the sixth largest U.S. Air Force base, encompassing 53,000 acres and 22,000 employees, housing our nation's most critical assets. And we could say more, but that right there gives you enough to know why we're so honored to have him not only as a regular broadcaster with us at worldviewtube.com, but joining us now to discuss this book by Annie Jacobson. Colonel, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for joining us on this Friday evening.
Good evening, Brandon. How are you?
I'm great. And just again, thank you for making time for us. We really appreciate it. By the way, he'll be one of the keynote speakers at our Ozarks Worldview Weekend coming up on Friday night, November 1st. He'll be there live in person with a bunch of other guys. Aaron Lavarco from Israel, Dr. Rob Linstead, Sharam Hadian, Dr. Andy Woods, Patrick Wood, who's an expert on transhumanism, technocracy, Leo Holman, who wrote the book Stealth Invasion in 2017 about the invasion of our country by, well, illegal invaders. Like happening now, historian Bill Federer and OBGYN Dr. James Thorpe. Full details at wvwtvstore.com, wvwtvstore.com. Colonel, so last weekend I had the chance to read a lot of this book by Annie Jacobson, Nuclear War, a Strategy, or I should say it's called a scenario. And her scenario has it that America is being attacked by North Korea, Kim Jong-un's North Korea. What I found, and then I listened to about a 2.5-hour interview that she gave someone online, and it was very interesting. What I found particularly troubling, among many things, was that she pointed out that North Korea does not tell us, America, when they're going to do a test. Russia will tell us that, but North Korea doesn't. And thereby, because they shoot off so many, I think they even shot off one last week, that every time this happens, I'm guessing that all the lights start flashing in these various command centers, Omaha, the one in Washington, D.C., the command center there that we talked about in the Pentagon. I guess we have the Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado Springs, NORTHCOM, STRATCOM, these things all, I guess all the lights start flashing. And they've got to figure out from the satellites that basically she described satellites, a string of them, I think Gibber, she called them, an acronym, that basically park over North Korea that run with the speed of the spinning of the Earth. So it gives the appearance that something about the size of a school bus, these satellites are parked over North Korea watching. And she claims, and she interviewed a ton of people for this book, former secretaries of defense, and what my friend Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, the late Peter Pry, that these satellites, infrared satellites, part of the National Reconnaissance Organization that one of our regular friends here used to be a part of. He had the corner office in Colorado, in Denver, and had 600 guys answering to him, that this satellite system can pick up the striking of a match, and that when North Korea fires up that missile, within 1/10 of a second, they've already been alerted in all these facilities. Can you speak to this kind of technology? It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, she's probably referring to what's called the SIBRS,
Yes.
SIBRS satellite system, which, as you said, uses infrared. But it also, there are other spectrums of intelligence that are used too. So we haven't been surprised by a North Korean nuclear test, at least inside the government anyway. in a very, very, very long time, because we collect intelligence through multispectral capabilities and devices. SIBRs is one of them.
And I'm not gonna make you tell us, because I know you can't, but I know that we must be listening, reading emails, listening to things. So we must have some idea they're about to do a test. We probably, I'm guessing, we might know days or weeks in advance that they're working toward a date of a launch, and we may know that from data that we're collecting. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I can assure you, we use every spectrum and domain of information capabilities to know very far ahead of time what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, where they're going to do it, and they haven't been able to surprise us in a very, very long time.
How concerned are you of someone like Kim Jong-un having these intercontinental ballistic missiles that I think fly at about Mach 20, can definitely reach New York, Washington, D.C.? I think you're talking about at least 2 million people would be dead if it hit D.C. over time, not only instantly, but then from the cancers and burns and whatnot. How concerned are you when someone like Kim Jong-un has this? Do you see Kim Jong-un as being someone that is all that mentally stable? Or, I mean, I don't think we look at Putin and think the guy's crazy. I sometimes, for some reason, I don't get the same stability feel when I listen to or watch Kim Jong-un. What are your thoughts?
Well, I am concerned that North Korea has intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States. Everybody should be concerned about that. That they are probably the most unstable of known nuclear powers on the planet. Now, it's my belief that Iran is already a nuclear weapons power, and they would take the trophy in instability and unreliability, not reliable, as far as their ability to control these weapons and not use them on some crazy, farcical type operation that would put the entire world in danger. So the North Koreans currently sit on top of that. Kim Jong-un, he knows if he uses his weapons, especially against the United States, that the shield that they provide currently essentially evaporates. And let me explain that a little bit. Look, he has seen Saddam Hussein be toppled. He has seen virtually every non-nuclear power that their adversary that the United States has faced in the last 25 or 30 years. We've either toppled them or gone against them militarily in combat operations. And we haven't done that with North Korea. And there have been many times when things have been very strained with North Korea over the decades, even since they obtained nuclear weapons and this ICBM capability that they have. But he knows that shield is what deters us from doing a regime change type kinetic operation against him. So that's the decision that he has to make if he's ever going to choose to use one of these. And I think that the likelihood that he's going to use one increases as his alliances with countries like China and Russia improve, their contacts increase, their capability exchanges increase, and they get more and more capable on the North Korean side because they're dealing with these two near superpowers that have thousands of nuclear weapons and far better technology than the North Koreans are able to get or develop because they're such a sequestered society. So if when they are talking about and giving off signals that they may act in concert with the Communist Chinese Party or Russia or both, the danger and risk in my mind increases dramatically. That they would use North Korea's capability to kick something off or kick something off from a nuclear perspective and see if it will stay a limited exchange instead of an out nuclear exchange, which the book you're referring to talks about the original single integrated operational plan and has some eyewitness testimony about the strength and veracity of that exchange and what would happen to the world if that were ever to occur. So
would Iran and Russia be willing to sacrifice North Korea? I guess that's what Here, let's have North Korea do this. They do a strike. They hit New York or D.C. or both, and they try to cut off the head of the snake. Now, she says that if North Korea were to launch one, we would launch 82 in response. But I guess my question goes back to, okay, so we obliterate North Korea. North Korea's off the table. Is there any chance Russia and Iran and China are willing to sacrifice North Korea to get this thing going to see if they can cut off the head of the snake?
It wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise you?
No.
I mean, look at the world today and how they're operating. No, it wouldn't surprise me. Now, I'm not going to go into the numbers that she goes to into her book because I can't, and it wouldn't be right to do so. But I can assure you there are various levels of options that range from very limited responses to a total response that would obliterate the North Koreans and probably damage quite significantly the South Korean peninsula. So it's a dramatically drastic decision to go all out in a response to something. Now, if they're true to their doctrines, the communists and the Russians too, and their old Soviet doctrine, the Chinese and the Russians and the North Koreans, they want to do an electromagnetic pulse attack against their adversary first as an initial laydown to do a couple of things. Take as much digital and electronic technology off the table of that adversary as they can, because the adversary I'm talking about is the United States of America and the West, which are the countries that are most dependent on the digital space and electrical power for our very livelihoods now. I mean, if you talk to somebody that's under 25 years old, and they cannot imagine a world without electrical power and all the devices that they have available to them that drive their lives, essentially. EMP attack would be their first approach to that, and to use North Korea would do well to get the West Coast to central part of the United States, but they still have to get the East Coast. So, North Korea's capability alone, as far as I know today, and I only have access to unclassified information at this point in open source, don't have the capability to reach all the way across to the East Coast of the United States of America. So they would have to fill that gap with some other adversary. And, the Iranians could do that, sea-launched ballistic missiles off of submarines, or this hypersonic missile that's nuclear capable that we all found out about I think it was last summer, that we don't have the ability to detect reliably or shoot it down reliably. One of those could do the same kind of thing. But that would be the first hint that they're going to go nuclear, is if they try to do an EMP attack. And their doctrine, all three of them, says that's what they would try to do first.
Let's go to this picture here. This is what you referred to as the SBIRS. Is that how you say it? SBIRS?
SBIRS.
Yeah, and here's a picture of the satellite, illustration by Lockheed Martin. And she writes that these are so powerful that they can see a single lighted match from 200 miles away. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. And within 1/10 of a second of them firing on that missile, the plume, the fire coming out of the bottom of it, within 1/10 of a second, all of these satellites are grabbing data and watching, and they're into 10 seconds, 15 seconds in, and she's 150 seconds in, they're getting all this data with trajectory and what's going on and whatnot. But she says that, again, that it's so powerful it can see a single lighted match from 200 miles away. She writes that the hot rocket exhaust on a short-range ballistic missile differs dramatically in plume, brightness, and size from that on an intercontinental ballistic missile, each being precisely measurable from space. In 2021, the U.S. Space Force tracked, now this is interesting, in 2021, the U.S. Space Force tracked 1,968 missile launches, so almost 2,000 launches around the globe. A number that, quote, increased more than over 3.5 times in 2022. So they went from 2,000 to increasing more than over 3.5 times in 2022. with U.S. Space Force monitoring launches of missiles around the globe. And this is coming from Space Systems Commanders Colonel Brian Denaro. As of September 2023, Russia continues to notify the U.S. of its ballistic missile test launches. No one wants to start a nuclear war by accident, but North Korea doesn't. Between January 2022 and May of 2023, North Korea test launched more than 100 missiles, including nuclear-capable weapons that can hit the continental United States. None of them were announced in advance. That's pretty remarkable. Now, I want to go back to Space Force.
Oh, before you continue, though, just to bring us up to date, since the October 7th in Israel started, that puts a whole added layer of missile launches on the globe in numbers, and I would imagine those numbers have gone up another 25%, 20 to 25% or so, because of the Iranians and Syrians and Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. I mean, they're shooting every day. And many of those are medium range missiles. So we're tracking those too.
So let's go back.
It's like having a unblinking eye staring at the planet all the time.
Let's go back to Space Force. So here she's mentioning Space Force and what they're doing. And she brings up Space Force a lot. Annie Jacobson brings it up a lot in this book. Donald Trump is the one that established Space Force. And yet he was mocked. Kind of the same way Ronald Reagan was mocked for wanting to, get the technology of Star Wars going, right? And she talks about that in here, and we'll get into it. But, basically a bullet shooting down a bullet. And yet Reagan was mocked for that. And yet look at what we see the Iron Dome in Israel doing over and over. And Donald Trump, he's given a speech not too long ago where he said he wants to get an Iron Dome for the United States of America if he becomes president again. Well, back in the 80s, they were mocking Ronald Reagan for the technology that Israel has and America's trying to pursue. Now, apparently, we're not real good at it. I think we have a slide here of the system, if I can find it, because here it is. The sea-based X-band radar is a floating self-propelled mobile active electronically scanned array early warning radar station designed to operate in high winds and heavy seas. It was developed as part of the United States Department of Defense Missile Defense Agency's ballistic missile defense system. She writes in here that this thing has cost billions and billions of dollars and only can maybe hit down 40% if we're lucky, but that is not taking into account if North Korea or Iran, but let's say North Korea, has multiple dummies on their warhead. So when the thing breaks apart and is coming in, it releases multiple warheads, a lot of them being dummies that would throw this thing off. But I go back to, you can certainly comment on that if you would, please, but I want to go back to Reagan. So here was Reagan in the 80s being mocked for something our government is spending billions on trying to do. Israel's really perfected it, and yet Reagan was mocked. Well, Donald Trump was mocked for starting Space Force. Isn't it interesting, these two presidents, there's a lot of similarities, different style, but a lot of similarities in ideology, both of them being mocked for what now people accept as being okay. But I think they only mocked it because it was Ronald Reagan, and they only mocked it because it's Donald Trump. What say you? Well,
they're both types of leaders that are willing to push against the status quo in their own governments. And remember, this United States government is massive. It was massive under Reagan, and under Trump, it's completely a Leviathan with DNA from massive octopuses. I mean, it's just so incredibly large that it's very difficult for a leader to push back against the consensus, push back against the status quo, and that's why we haven't won a war in 35, 40 years. It's because we don't have anybody that's capable of pushing far enough back against this government to ensure that we can have something like an Iron Dome-like system, which the technology obviously is available. The system works very well. It's not perfect. Of course, it can be overwhelmed too. The XB-1 radar there is based on land-based what we call backscatter, electronically scanned phased array radars that are on land too. But it's older technology. It's not the latest 21st century technology by and large. And we haven't put the funding behind it that needs to be behind it to make it a system that's impregnable. And the United States is perfectly capable of developing and funding and operating and maintaining a system that is impregnable. That's what Reagan got laughed at about, because, well, you can't stop them all. And that's just not true anymore. If we put our minds and our resources to it, we could do that. You know, the limitations of Iron Dome, by and large, are due to amount of ammunition, which is a resource issue, and the ability to have enough launchers ready to go to reload that ammunition in order to respond without getting overwhelmed. Like, that's what Hezbollah likes to do, and that's what the fear is in northern Israel, is that the Iron Domes are not easily, but they can be overwhelmed, allowing enemy missiles and rockets to get through and kill civilians, because they target civilians intentionally out of southern Lebanon. Hezbollah does, just like Hamas does, and the Iranians.
She writes that after 5 years and many billions of U.S. tax dollars spent, 9 out of 20 hit-to-kill U.S. Inceptor tests failed, which means there is only an approximate 55% chance that the Hwasong-17 North Korean ICBM will be shot down before it reaches its target. She says 40% in another part of the book, but that, again, doesn't count in the factor that they may release dummy warheads, which would confuse this thing. She did say that at any given time, these 44 interceptor kill vehicles are on alert, siloed at 2 separate locations in the continental United States. 40 of these missiles are located in Alaska at Fort Greely, and 4 are located in California at Vandenberg Space Force base near Santa Barbara. So 44 missiles total. That's it. 44 missiles total. And yet, then she goes into, some of the missiles that these other countries have. As early as 2024, Russia has 1,674 deployed nuclear weapons. So we're going to try to maybe shoot down a bullet with 44 of them, the majority of which are on ready for launch status. China has a stockpile of more than 500. Pakistan and India each have around 165. North Korea has around 50. With 44 missiles in its entire inventory, the U.S. Inceptor program is mostly for show. What are your thoughts?
Well, some of those countries like Pakistan and India, their missiles aren't capable of reaching the United States. North Korea's barely is. So you have to factor those facts in when you're talking about this stuff. The other thing you have to factor in is that the United States national policy is not to defend ourselves against the intercontinental ballistic missile strike. Think about that, what I just said.
Yeah, I know. That's weird.
Yeah. So we allowed the old Soviet Union, and Russia still has them today, to have missile defense interceptors where we built none. This system that you're talking about that's up in Alaska and on the West Coast is specifically, looking at North Korea's threat and those kinds of threats too. So it's not designed to defend us against an all-out nuclear or ICBM assault from China and Russia, either singularly from either one of those countries or together, which they would overwhelm us if they fired their nuclear forces all together. Russia outnumbers us by a small number already, and when you add China's in, and China, I'll remind everybody, has been building up their missile forces dramatically. I think the last outgoing Indo-Pacific military commander, admiral, said that they had increased their capability, like tripled it. For some reason, so it's a massive buildup, and if they were to go into an alliance together with Russia, they massively outnumber us from a nuclear forces perspective. If an all-out war happened, the United States would be utterly destroyed.
Whew. I'm going to get back to some of this. Let's go back to this SBX radar. I'm going to show the picture again of that. Look at this thing. The SBX radar station is a sight to behold, she writes. She says, this is a one-of-a-kind, stadium-sized, seagoing, self-propelled radar station, weighs 50,000 tons, requires 1.9 million gallons of gas to run, can withstand 30-foot tall waves, is larger than a football field, rises 26 stories out of the ocean, requires 86 crew members to carry out its mission, and claims to be the most sophisticated phased array electromechanically steered X-band radar system in the world. Now, she says the SBX advocates used to explain how powerful the SBX is to say if it's placed in the Chesapeake Bay, listen to this, folks, if placed in the Chesapeake Bay, this is what their defenders would say, its radars would be able to see a baseball-sized object in San Francisco from an observation post in Washington, D.C., some 2,900 miles away. She says this is true, sort of. The baseball needs to be hovering 870 miles above San Francisco in a direct line of sight with the radar in D.C. in order to be seen. But she's showing how people used to pitch it, and she's saying, well, let's put that into context. But she quotes Mike Colbert, a retired Air Force colonel who oversaw the program for 3 years, had by 2017 already predicted it would fail. Quote, "You can spend an awful lot of money and end up with nothing," end quote. That's what he told the Los Angeles Times in 2015. Quote, "Billions and billions were spent on the SBX programs that didn't lead anywhere," end quote. Critics call the SBX radar system, quote, "the Pentagon's $10 billion radar gone bad," end quote. I guess we give them an A for effort, or is this just the military-industrial complex spending money? Is there something we should be doing better to try to defend our homeland, Colonel?
It's developing technology, so it's emerging technology that you're dealing with a system like this, and you're swimming upstream against the consensus of the massive bureaucracy. So when President Reagan, forced the system to design missile defense systems, that is what he's pushing against, and the entire industry and the entire research and development piece of it. It's all pushing back against it. It's kind of like, the space shuttle. Mm-hmm. The space shuttle was designed by committee. That's why it looked like it did. And then it was built by a committee, with the parts being built in almost every state in the union, because the bureaucracy controlled that development instead of somebody like an Elon Musk controlling the development.
And let me just jump in there for a second, because
with military technology like this.
Let me jump in for a second, because what you're saying is to get it approved through Congress and the funding, members of Congress would want to see that their state was getting piece of this funding. So you have this thing being constructed and built in pretty much every state of the union. So every member of Congress can go back to their district and brag about how they brought this technology and these jobs and blah, 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 and now we'll approve it. And so it was by committee versus, as you said, a visionary like Elon Musk, who's going to do it fast, quick, efficient, and probably better.
Yeah, well, definitely better, no doubt about it. Because I mean, look at what we're talking about here. So instead of getting an Iron Dome level system that's impregnable, which we are capable of doing as a people now, we get this thing that works maybe 40% of the time, but it still uses all the latest technology, et cetera, but it lacks enough funding because of the politics involved. You're building it by massive committee and multiple layers of committees instead of having it like a Musk-type brain driving a system to do what's right every single time in the smallest amount of time, using the best available materials, designs, and those kind of things to get to an end state of something that you laid out as a requirement, which is an impregnable missile defense system. Okay, mm-hmm. That should be the requirement. If you're going to build one, that should be it. So we've got to change the way we do business in the U.S. military, and people that are innovators have been talking about this for decades. Dwight Eisenhower warned about this in his farewell address when he used the term the military-industrial complex, to watch out for it. So what we've got to do is take a different approach, and we have one opportunity. We have another opportunity here on November 5th, to have a person that has the courage, like Ronald Reagan did, like Mr. Trump has already done, to push the government in the United States to be innovative and flexible and produce what we're capable of producing, instead of producing something that works less than half of the time for trillions of dollars.
Let's go back to this. Logan was showing some pretty cool footage, B-roll footage of this. And this is the long-range discrimination radar. She writes, Annie Jacobson writes in her book, Nuclear War Scenario, that given the missile's trajectory, this is the one coming out of North Korea she's writing about, the first radar station to see the attacking missile as it comes over the horizon will be Clear Space Force Station in Alaska. So the SBIRS satellites have picked this thing up, but she says that the first radar system to see it will be this one coming over the horizon in Alaska. She writes that it will take another 8 minutes or so for the radars in Alaska to see the incoming missile. To analysts here, this will feel like an excruciating amount of time as the clock ticks on the incoming nuclear missile threat. So again, I don't know what you can and cannot talk about, but apparently these SBIRS satellites can see it launch, but what is the difference, I guess I'm asking, between a satellite watching it and then the earthbound or the earth-stationed radar system seeing it? Why do we need these two systems? Why can't we just track the whole thing with satellites? Why do they have to have this 8 minutes where the radars in Alaska won't be able to see it until it pops over the horizon?
Well, the words you just used, track, okay? So the SBIRS system, it detects, identifies, okay, communicates to the command and control system to energize all other surveillance assets and notify those assets that it's got this detection and identification of a possible threat. There's a digital handoff. These are massive cloud-like networks nowadays that do that. And the system we're discussing is the actual kinetic defense system that is going to pick that handoff signal up and do its own detection, do its own identification once it gets that. And I'm just talking slow, but I mean, we're talking, blinks of an eye here. And then what it does is tracks. Its system starts tracking on it so that if a missile is shot, that missile and the tracking system are working together to hit the target and destroy the target.
Let's stop it right there. Stop that right there, Logan. Now that system has broken into its various phases. Then we saw it open up and spit out all these, I'm guessing those are the warheads, right? Mm-hmm. And some of those could be dummy warheads.
I wasn't really watching the screen let me take a look at it.
You can go ahead and the screen.
Every ICBM system that I'm aware of, and I've seen them all, has decoys, some kind of decoy concept with it, because what intercontinental ballistic missile, most of them have more than one reentry vehicle with a warhead in it. They're called MRV'd, multiple reentry vehicles. And in among those reentry vehicles, in order to fool defense systems that are trying to shoot the warheads down in their descent phase, there will be these decoys that go out there to try to fool the defense systems.
So we're about to see that, I think, here, as he replays this, we're about to see this, there he goes, there it goes. Now it's going to open up and throw out their warheads. Now, some of those are going to be dummy warheads, you're saying, which, of course, throws off this SBX system where they're trying to hit a bullet with a bullet. Now, explain to our audience, if you can, what is going on there? Are these now, this is up in space, but it's not floating in gravity? Are we up in gravity now and they're about to fall into the atmosphere? So are they in a non-gravity area there and then enter back into the gravity, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean they're in low. It's going to go up and hit low Earth orbit level apogee, and then the warheads will be released to go to their targets, and they're coming down at very, very fast.
Are they just free falling? Are they just free falling?
Well, they're not really free falling. They're coming down under.
No, but I mean, are they?
They're not being driven by a rocket. They're being driven by gravity and speed.
But they're not able to control them at that point, right?
Minimally.
So at that point, if they had,
they're going to their targets.
are they going to their targets by GPS?
Some kind of guidance, yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the areas you can't talk about too much. Okay. Because Peter Pry used to explain, I think, the Satan 1, the Satan 2 out of Russia, and that those would have multiple warheads and they could skip on the atmosphere. So they didn't have your traditional trajectory. So it could skip on the atmosphere and really throw our team off over here. And then there was talk that artificial intelligence could take over. And if one of them gets knocked down or doesn't go to its intended target, another one that was going to its target could be redirected to go to the primary target. So obviously, Russia must have some kind of artificial intelligence and geo-tracking in there that allows those warheads to make a shift, go to a different direction. At that, I guess my question is, A, do you think that's true? And B, what is propelling those things at that point? Because if they're changing where they're supposed to be going, then clearly something's, it's not just free falling from space. There's got to be something that's moving it to eliminate going to this target and pick up going to the one that is primary.
Yeah, I mean, you're going very, very fast, at very fast hypersonic speeds just to get to that orbit level, okay? So when it's coming back down, depending on its angle, and the angles can be changed to cause the skipping effect that you're talking about on the atmosphere. I mean, think about all the movies you've watched of space capsules with people in it, people being concerned about, hitting the right insertion point to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere from orbit. All of those things come into play with intercontinental ballistic missiles, like the ones we in Russia and China, and now the North Koreans use with these re-entry vehicles. But they are targeted. They're going to targets both a point, as far as a geographic point on the ground and altitude. If they're going to be electromagnetic pulses, Dr. Pry was an expert at. It's going to be a higher altitude detonation, so they're able to be targeted in all three dimensions in that way. And it's speed and gravity that really enables that. And it's, a reentry vehicle coming back down to Earth to hit its target is the fastest thing you're going to see that day.
Now, this long-range discrimination radar system there in Alaska, would this be one of the systems that they would want to target? So let's forget about,
Sure.
the continental U.S. Let's just go for our first strikes are going to be this system right here. Wouldn't this be on their first strike if this is so important to seeing what's going on and tracking?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people think the Pentagon would be the first strike. I've never thought that. I mean, it'll be part of any major missile attack, I'm sure, but the first targets they want to go is put our eyes and ears out.
All right, so that'd be one of the places there. And then, of course, we go to the Pentagon, the Global Operations Center. I'm sorry, let's go to this one. Emergency conference room in the National Military Command Center. Now, I'm guessing that's the room you've been in multiple times because your bio reads that you used to work in this area of the Pentagon, correct?
I've been in that room many times.
I bet you have. So how, in addition to maybe this building in Alaska, then, of course, we have NORAD, we have Northcom, we have Stratcom, and of course, we're talking about places like Colorado Springs, Omaha, Nebraska. So obviously, these places would be high on the target list as well because this is where all these teams are sitting and watching. So these would be key targets for our enemies, correct?
Yeah, I mean, take Cheyenne Mountain, for instance. That command center was put inside of a mountain because we know it's a target. Now the weapons today can easily take that out. It's not as safe as it once was when it was designed and built.
What you know what year it was built?
I do not.
Okay, so you're saying at one time it was put there because of the safety of the mountain, but you just said due to the design and the type of weapons today, that's not quite what it used to be. That right there is kind of frightening, is it not?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, with nuclear warfare, especially with today's technology, I mean, there's nowhere that you're going to be able to go. The North Koreans think they have done that. They have vast deposits of granite that they can dig down into and design their structures called hardened and deeply buried targets. But, the enemy always gets a vote. And we have massive numbers of scientists and engineers and that are constantly working on new weapons designs in order to attack that very type of target anytime somebody comes up with a new idea along those lines. So. And the Russians, the Soviets are the same way. The Chinese are the same way. Nobody should sell the Russians or the Chinese short as far as their ability to use modern technology. I mean, they may not, especially the Russians, they may not design things as pretty as the United States does, but they certainly make them effective.
Let's just go through this real quick. So we have the Missile Warning Center, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, Colorado. That's obviously going to be a target. So think Colorado Springs here, folks. Then you got Washington, D.C. Then you've got the Global Operations Center off at Air Force Base in Nebraska. I think that's near Omaha, correct, sir?
Yes.
And of course, then we help us lay people out. When people talk about Northcom, Stratcom, NORAD obviously is Cheyenne Mountain. Is that right?
North American Air Defense Command. That includes the Canadians, as a matter of fact. And we've had for decades and decades now lines of radar system. You may have heard something called the DEW line, DEW line. So all kinds of radar systems have been built and developed and fielded across Canada, Alaska, North America, Western and Eastern United States to be able to detect attacks against us. Started out looking for air attacks. Now we've gone to these systems that do both, look for missile attacks and air attacks and track them. And NORAD's primarily responsible for making sure those systems are operational.
And then we mentioned, here we have NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, and Northcom, U.S. Northern Command, Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're going to get to that in a minute. I thought we had one, Logan, of the Buckley Space Force. Okay, there it is. All right, this is Aurora, Colorado. Okay, here's what I want to ask you your thoughts on. We were mentioning Omaha, Nebraska, Aurora, Colorado, Colorado Springs. Okay, Aurora, Colorado's been in the news lately. You got Venezuelan gangs running around with semi-automatics and scopes. That Colonel Mills said, I wouldn't be shocked if some of these groups aren't under the control and command of the CCP. Well, when I was reading this book and she starts talking about Aurora, Colorado, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That's been in the news lately. And then I got to thinking about, well, wait a minute, where do we have other sensitive places? Omaha, Nebraska, Colorado Springs. You can start rattling them off. Obviously, we have some in Florida. We're not naming them all, but we're naming some really important ones here. I guess my question is, again, I'm not a military guy. You are. This is what you rehearsed. But if I were the enemy and I were thinking about how I could disrupt my enemy state, America, let's put a bunch of military-age males in there with automatics, semi-automatics, maybe biological, chemical weapons. Let's have them attack the infrastructure, take down the power grid, because I know some of the military installations are dependent on the civilian power grid. But let's just create havoc in Aurora, Colorado. Let's create havoc in Colorado Springs. Let's create havoc in Omaha, Nebraska. And you say, well, it doesn't matter. These people are all safe on the base. Well, I'm thinking, yeah, they are. They're safe on the base. Let's hope, right? But yet we just had some guys try to ram with a Ryder truck or something, some Pakistani dudes, and the government's being pretty suspicious about it, ram a military base at the entrance. And our reporter, Todd Bensman, has been all over that, saying, with Freedom of Information Act, trying to find out who were these guys, where were they from, what were they doing, why were they trying to do this? Was this a test run for getting into some of these bases, number one? But number two, what have you, and you had men under your command like this, you got a guy, you got a gal, and they're in Colorado Springs, they're in Omaha, Nebraska, they're in Washington, D.C., they're in Aurora, Colorado. They're human beings. They're not robots. They're human beings with feelings and concerns about their loved ones who are on the outside. And if you're thinking about that guy or that gal that's got a very stressful job, has to be at 100% for the data that's coming in at lightning speed, everybody doing their job with rote muscle memory because they rehearse. Well, let's throw them off. Let's make sure that Aurora and Omaha and Colorado Springs, where their families are, is burning down. So they're sitting there trying to do their job, but their mind is with their family. Does the enemy think this way? Let's disrupt the community in the civil area to impact the military.
Well, we think that way, so the enemy thinks that way. Naturally, it's human nature. That airborne intelligence wing I was the vice commander of. I was also the vice commander of the base where it's at, the top at Air Force Base, by the way, were one of the places that we're talking about. Not every family lives on base. That's one of the security issues that we face. It's one of the reasons why I think we like, in the Air Force, we like our commanders and their families to live on the installation instead of living off the base, because it's easier to protect everybody and keep the families safer in that way. But we can't do that for every single member of the United States military. So there's always going to be some families living off base, and that's a security risk, especially now when we have these hundreds of thousands of, just in the Chinese case, Chinese military age males that are not being tracked inside the United States of America. We are at a much higher risk today than we were on September 1st, 2011, or 2001, I'm sorry, or even September 12th, 2001. We're at much higher risk of something going down that gets quickly out of control and becomes a nuclear exchange between two nuclear superpowers than we were previous to that, because of this issue. Now, we don't put all our secrets out there in the open. The ones you're talking about are the ones that are out there in the open. So the enemy's always got to consider that there are knowns that they can know, but there are unknowns intentionally that they're not going to know.
I want to go to this picture. I looked it up while you were talking there. This is the Marine Corps Times. 2 people in ICE custody after attempting to breach Virginia Marine Base. The Marine Corps prevented 2 people from breaking onto a Marine installation in Virginia on May 3rd, turned them over to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. 2 people drove up to the Fuller Road gate of the Marine Corps Base, Quantico, Virginia, in a box truck and were stopped by military sentries. And this is exactly what Todd Bensman was on almost immediately. Started filing Freedom of Information Act, trying to find out who they are, where they were from. If I remember correctly, I think they were Pakistani, if I remember correctly. If you had to guess, maybe you know more about this case than I do, but if you had to guess, do you think this is just testing the system just to see the response for future activies? Like we're talking about now?
It could be in some cases. It could be an actual attempt. What a lot of the reporting about those 2 guys fails to talk about is that they actually they got stopped and then they tried to run the gate. So they aggressively went after it, and were the guards were able to stop them and take them into custody and those kind of things. And we still don't know enough about these 2 individuals and what was really going on. And that's one of my problems with government leadership these days, although especially at the local level, is that they're not being transparent with the American public, and that takes one of your tools off the table. And that tool is the public. See something, say something. You remember that?
Yep.
When you're not being transparent with the public and you're intentionally doing things that destroys the confidence in you of the American public. You're removing a valuable tool that has won us wars like the American Revolution. Okay? It's crazy to see this type of behavior. And this case is an example. We still don't know enough. We don't know enough about the assassins that have tried to kill Donald J. Trump yet. And it makes everybody in America feel like, well, they're covering something up, either incompetence or it's an inside job. Think about what I just said, an inside job, other Americans trying to kill other Americans using their own government assets. It's incredibly bad how we're approaching this. It's one thing to keep classified information protected, which we need to do. But it's another thing to lie to the public, to be disingenuous to the public, to withhold critical information the public could use to help us, to keep everybody safe. That's just wrong. And things need to change. And I hope someday in my lifetime we get back to folks that work in the government that realize they're public servants and they're not little dictators and tyrants that can get away with what they want.
Now we're getting report. I think this is coming from Alpha News up in Minnesota, where Walz is the governor. Walz had just returned from another trip to China around the time when the manual went missing. Walz's former National Guard colleague alleges classified nuclear manual went missing in Nebraska during his tenure. I think this is Alpha News. Retired Nebraska National Guard soldier who worked with Walz for 3 years recounted the disappearance in an interview as a congressional investigation into Walz China ties continue. I mean, this is what you're talking about, right, Colonel?
Yeah, it's a very serious matter because the artillery weapon system that he was working with had a nuclear round capability for it. Yes, we can shoot nuclear weapons out of artillery tubes and have. So that level of document is going to have the capability of the warhead, the capabilities of the weapon system itself, how it's used, how it can be defended against, how you can overcome attempts to defend against that weapon system. And all of those details, while they may not be top secret information, they're all going to be classified information and very sensitive because it has to do with nuclear forces and nuclear weapons capabilities of the United States of America. And to not know that this occurred and not know that the reports have to be out there from an investigative perspective, I've called for it to be released immediately because we need to know if this individual is involved in any way, even tangentially, with controlling this material or using this material because of his trips to Communist China and his love for the Chinese Communist Party.
My guess,
and I'm just talking about what he's expressed and done.
Exactly. My guest is Colonel Rob Maness. His show is each and every day right here on worldviewtube.com, 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, worldviewtube.com. But again, you can also find out a lot more about him, book him to come speak to your group, find out a lot more about his broadcast and what he's up to at robmaness.com, robmaness.com. Do you have a Substack?
I do. It's called Colonel's Brief. Colonel's Brief.
colonelsbrief.substack.com.
You can search that on Substack, the Colonel's Brief.
The Colonel's Brief. Okay. The Colonel's
got
Brief.
My picture there. My name's on it.
All right. Look for that on Substack, the Colonel's Brief. Don't forget, he's also going to be a keynote speaker at the Ozarks Worldview Weekend coming up Friday night, November 1st. I guess I want to just reiterate, folks, the people that we bring to these conferences, this is the 21st annual Ozarks Worldview Weekend. We've been doing Worldview Weekends for 34 years, but our 21st year in the Ozarks. These guys all have incredible resumes in their area of expertise. So again, they're going to be in the building live. You can walk up, talk to them, visit with them. It's centrally located in Missouri, central Missouri, beautiful Lake of the Ozarks, rolling hills of the Ozarks. The leaves should be in full color, and you can get a room right on overlooking the lake, have your morning coffee on the balcony overlooking the lake. It's gorgeous. If you do book your room, be sure to use the code WRLD, WRLD, so you get the room rate we negotiated. Full details are at WVWTVstore.com, WVWTVstore.com, and Colonel Rob will be one of the speakers. Colonel, I want to go to this aircraft. This is a pretty fascinating, I think that's a 747. Yeah, it is. The Boeing E-4 Advanced Airborne Command Post. An E-4, when in action, is denoted a National Airborne Operations Center and has been nicknamed the Doomsday Plane. I don't even know if you can answer this. Have you been on the Doomsday Plane?
I have.
You have?
I have.
I kind of thought you might have been.
It's one of the assets of the Air Force's largest airborne intelligence wing.
Wow. And I'm guessing there has to be more than one. You always got to have backups.
There is more than one.
Mm-hmm. Here's what she writes about it. She says, the runway at Offutt Air Force Base is a critical piece of nuclear counterattack infrastructure, which means obviously this has to be on the list of things the enemy has got on their kill list, right? Immediately. Never more so now than in this scenario. The scenario is their ICBM from North Korea headed our way. With a nuclear-armed ICBM headed to the U.S., the runway here services the mini fleet of America's airborne nuclear command posts. So in other words, if they've got Stratcom, Northcom, all these places, the military command center at the Pentagon, if these are all targets, then these people eventually at some point, and again, I don't know if you can say, but at some point, these people are going to say, okay, everybody, we got to get out of here. But it's certainly at some point, if the president is in the White House, he's now gone to the Situation Room, maybe now been moved to a bunker underneath the White House. At some point, I'm guessing they're going to grab him underneath the armpits as they dig Dick Cheney on 9/11, and his feet are not going to touch the floor until they have him on Marine One. And for Marine One, I'm guessing, I don't know, they're going to Andrews Air Force Base, Joint Base Andrews Air Force Base. And my guess is they're going to put him on a doomsday plane where he can then be more secure from EMP and have communications and give commands. Again, I don't know how much of that you can talk about, but she gives some of these scenarios in the book where at some point the Secret Service are going to come in and he's gone. And he's standing in front of a bank of TVs or screens, Northcom, Stratcom, all of them talking to him, the Pentagon, and they're advising him and giving him advice because he's the commander in chief. And at some point, Secret Service walks in and grabs him under each armpit, and his feet are off the floor, and he's gone. to the cries of people like, wait a minute, because they're wanting his commands. But she says there's really at this point, there's no issue. And I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but the Secret Service at this point are not going to have a conversation with Northcom and Stratcom and the Pentagon because their duty is to get him safe. So she seemed to give the indication that at this point, this decision's already been made, you're leaving, and they're headed to Marine One. And then she picks up from there and says, never more now than ever has this been such a critical as with a nuclear-armed ICBM headed to the U.S. The runway here services the mini fleet of America's airborne nuclear command posts, known anonymously as its Doomsday Planes. These retrofitted Boeing aircraft are always at the ready, always prepared to command a nuclear war from the air. Our military is very powerful, very lethal, says Captain Ryan Lawrence, an officer who manages the airmen on a Doomsday Plane. Quote, but it doesn't happen without communication, end quote. Inside the Doomsday Plane is where the Stratcom commander can receive launch orders during a nuclear crisis, then execute those orders even after America's nuclear command and control facilities on the ground have been destroyed. Which is why the Stratcom commander is now hyper-focused on getting the blue impact or counterattack clock running. Then on getting himself out of Stratcom's underground bunker into a doomsday plane that idles here on the tarmac, engines spinning, awaiting his arrival for takeoff. Stratcom's Global Operations Center at Offutt Air Force Base is considered to be a top 10 nuclear target on every enemy's list. But its commander won't leave the bunker until he speaks with the president first. Track data on the incoming ICBM has determined the missile's endpoint to be somewhere on the East Coast, presumably either New York, Washington, D.C., but it will be another 2 to 3 minutes before the designated target becomes more precisely defined. So at some point, your Stratcom guy off at Air Force Base in Nebraska hops on that thing. But I'm guessing the president's got a doomsday plane. They're going to get him on Marine One, get him out of there. And they're going to, and then the scenario here is he's sitting on Marine One and they're flying and he's still in communication, giving orders. How much is this practiced with him, the president? Her book claims that this kind of thing is practiced almost daily with these people, that this kind of thing is almost done daily as a practice. But she says that for the president, you'd be shocked at how undereducated most presidents are on how to wage nuclear war, and that some of these scenarios have not been practiced. So I don't know if you can say, but have they practiced where he's, as this scenario starts out, he's in the White House dining room, he's having a cup of coffee and a snack in the afternoon, and then all of a sudden his national security advisor comes busting in the door, telling him what's going on. He's given a phone. He's now talking to the Secretary of Defense and others. Then he's moved, I guess, into the Situation Room. Then he's moved into the bunker. And then at some point, the Secret Service come in, grab him on the armpits, and his feet are not touching the floor as they hustle him to Marine One. From Marine One, in her scenario, he's being briefed and advised and giving orders. And I think they're on their way to Joint Base to hop on a doomsday plane there and get him in the air. How much of that is practice with a president? That's a lot going on for him to try to take this in. And at some point, she says he has under 6 minutes. Maybe you can explain also with all these questions, why is this under 6 minutes? I mean, why are we reached at under 6 minute standpoint? I think these things are taking 30 minutes to get here. Why are we at an under 6 minutes? Why hasn't it started before? But are the presidents ever rehearsed where they're actually physically being moved and rehearsing this so they get used to this? Or are we saying that a president who goes through this may go through this for the very first time as far as physically being picked up, thrown onto Marine One, flown out there, all of this coming at one time, whereas everybody else has practiced this on almost a daily basis? He's the one guy sitting here going, oh my word.
Well, the pieces are practiced all the time. She's exactly right about that. All the pieces of the system, some of which you've talked about and she's accurate with, and some of which she's not talked about and you haven't talked about, and I'm not going to go into them because you have to have something. The secrecy is the protection of the system. So these pieces are practiced all the time, and many of them on a daily basis. Exactly right. So because we have to ensure the safety, security, and reliability of the nuclear command and control system, the nuclear weapons themselves, and the ability to get them to the target that if we ever, God forbid, have to do that. So yes, all the time. I can assure you the training given, I've seen the training, is adequate, is very good, and is given to the principals, the President of the United States, which is the principal decider in nuclear force execution. So definitely that. The system, I'll take you back to September 11th, 2001, and the president was put immediately back on Air Force One, taken out of a school classroom by the Secret Service, right? You remember that?
Oh, I sure do.
And put on Air Force One. Air Force One got airborne. Now, what was happening that day was the United States of America Strategic Command's global nuclear command and control war game was kicking off, where you actually had pieces. The NAOC, the National Airborne Operations Center aircraft, one of them was actually launching out of Andrews Air Force Base when the Pentagon got hit as part of that war game, that exercise. The office that I worked in, I was in the Pentagon because I was not part of the strategic war game that this was, because my focus was on theater nuclear operations at the time. But all the other players that are responsible for this were all out and about at the different command and control nodes, and one of those was the NAOC, the Doomsday aircraft you're talking about. And so Air Force One is also part of the system. And when they launched out of Florida, their pilots broke into their bags, the football, and start making radio calls, secure radio calls, to find out, A, what's going on, B, what the plan is. Well, my boss was at Barksdale Air Force Base. And he got a call. He was there as part of this nuclear command and control exercise. So we got very lucky in this case because key players like my boss were at the right locations. And Barksdale Air Force Base is the home of Global Strike Command today, but it was the home of 8th Air Force, the Nuclear Bomber Command in those days, and still is. But Global Strike Command headquarters is there now also. But anyway, so my boss was there, and when the Air Force One pilots came up and started talking into the command and control system, he had them come there because they didn't know where to go. Nobody knew what the situation really was, whether Offutt or DC was still available to take the president to. So they brought him there. And eventually, when he made his first appearance, I think on television, I think he had been taken eventually to Offutt Air Force Base to sit it out because Offutt had not been attacked. And then that night they took him back into D.C. once they figured out that things were safe to do that. So that is the system in action right there. And all of the things that she talks about in the book appear to be correct. But there are things that are not in that book that I'm not going to go into any more detail than I already have by telling this public knowledge story here on September 11th, 2001.
Here's some footage. Let's look at this. Here's Air Force One on 9/11 arriving there at Offutt Air Force Base. I don't know if there's any audio with it or not.
Bush headed to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, but he couldn't communicate
let me back
with
that up. Here we go.
Air Force One.
For Nebraskans, the surprise of Air Force One landing at Offutt Air Force Base on September 11th showed the weight of that awful day. Bush headed to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, but he couldn't communicate with everyone he needed at the same time, so he headed to Offutt, where he could.
In such an uncertain circumstance, the thought was we got to get the president somewhere safe and somewhere where he can communicate.
Dr. Mark Kairos was an Army officer serving as a special assistant to the commander of STRATCOM.
Civil aviation had been shut down. To see those fighters come in, it was kind of a bit of a shock.
Many at STRATCOM, including then Air Force Staff Sergeant Michael Suglia, were pulled off an annual exercise for nuclear forces after the attack.
My supervision basically gave me a task to call around to the other warfighting combatant commands and ask status, make sure everybody was available. What I didn't realize at that point, that was most likely building the briefing for President Bush.
Kairos was at the president's briefing.
That's like something out of a movie. You know, you see that on television shows or movies, but to be there and have actually been, like I said, about 40 feet away from the president when all of that was going on, I will always remember that day.
After the update, Bush was led to an underground room at the old STRATCOM headquarters where he could video chat with his national security team. Bush stayed only 90 minutes before heading back to Washington, but he left an impression.
I think it highlighted to us the importance of the mission that we conduct here at United States Strategic Command daily.
Aaron Sandiford, 3 News.
Pretty fascinating. You want to comment on that before I move to the next topic? We got about another 15 minutes left in the program, but this has been highly educational. You want to comment on that?
The story that I just told matches up perfectly with that. Again, it's the system at work, and I will tell you this, as far to my knowledge anyway, now I was just a young major, so I'm low level on this, but none of my supervisors or colleagues ever said that the president, we had a difficult time getting the president to do what he needed to do. And that's because, and the training that I talked about witnessing was for that guy, that man right there. So I think the training is right, and the decision tools that we design for them are as good. I mean, it's the best America has to offer. The men and women that, especially that write the Black Book, the Nuclear Decision Handbook, where they take the big war plan and translated into options that are usable by a civilian and trainable, and are able to do that. And we have confidence in the system so that the decision maker, the president, is able to use it. It's pretty remarkable.
Let me ask you about the mobile ICBMs. I know Russia, North Korea, I don't know about China, but I know Russia and North Korea have mobile ICBMs. The United States, we've heard from Dr. Pry. He told us before he passed away, did shows on the fact we have zero. And North Korea can hide those things underground, hide them under bridges, so they can't be targeted. Why don't we have mobile ICBMs?
Again, it's the same reason we don't have adequate missile defense system. We chose to not be able to defend ourselves, which means that we don't have those to complicate their targeting. We have sea-launched ballistic missiles and submarines, which really is the ace in the hole, and then fixed ICBMs, which are all targeted, I'm sure. And then our bomber bases, which are very, very few now compared to when I was in Strategic Command, where we had over 600 B-52s and 400 KC-135s specifically for the nuclear mission. And we have less than 65 B-52s now, and 17 or 18 B-2s that are nuclear capable, and that's it at a few bases, 3 bases. So the targeting complexity from our perspective is very, very narrow and easy to target. But theirs, we've let them build underground systems, mobile ICBM systems. You saw pictures of it. There's one right there that you're showing. The Topol M in Russia. You've seen pictures of it moving around in February of 2022 when they put their nuclear forces on a higher state of alert for the Ukraine war. And those kind of things, and we do target those systems, but it takes a lot more effort and resources to do it because they're mobile, obviously, and they have extra places where they can hide them. They don't just hide them in a few locations. So it's like a big shell game.
So you agree we should have them? The U.S. should have mobile ICBMs.
Oh, absolutely, and we should have the best missile. We should have an impregnable missile defense system.
So we got the U.S. does not have road mobile missile launchers. All 400 of its ICBM missiles are housed underground silos across America. Whereas the precise location of all 400 of the ICBM silos in America is available on the internet, North Korea's road mobile ICBMs are continually on the move. So the Defense Department cannot easily target them for destruction before or during nuclear war. Let me ask you about the nuclear football. She writes in here as she interviews people that once that thing is opened up, the manual, the black book, and you, I think, have a picture. I think you have one of them that you helped write on the wall of your office up high where people can't get to it. And that black book, she talks about it quite a bit. And someone she interviews refers to it as the options are laid out in front of him, and he makes a choice, column A, column B, column C, and maybe you can get me some graphics, Logan, of the nuclear football or a scenario of it to throw up so people can kind of get an idea. But she writes in the book about option A, option B, option C, and she quotes somebody familiar with this process, and it's like choosing from a menu at IHOP or the Pancake House or the Waffle House. And so some kind of laminated cards in front of him will give me a few of these on A, give me this on B, and give me this on C. And then she's talking about the fact that he's being advised along the way for this. How much of that can you speak to?
Well, I can tell you that he's being briefed in real time on what the situation is, so he has an understanding of what's driving the reason for opening up the black book, because there better be a darn good reason, right? And the president
has it ever been open? Has it ever been open that you're aware of, and then shut back up? Like, oh, glad we didn't have to do that.
I'm not going to go into that. but
we have had
us many times. The people that work on it.
Right, but we have had times when we, Logan, see if you can find it on YouTube. The White House Chief of Staff had to wake up Jimmy Carter, or was about to wake up Jimmy Carter, because they thought there was an actual nuclear strike coming our way from Russia. Do you remember that, Colonel?
Yeah, there's been several times on both sides that accidental alerting has happened to launch bombers into the air. That's happened once or twice. The false indications that missiles have been launched and are on the way, those kind of things.
Well,
both sides in those days built systems that were fail-safe enough to prevent inadvertent attack on each other.
let's watch a little bit of this. Here we go.
Scarier is that he or she can almost have no checks or balances on the strike, but more on that later. The mysterious black briefcase that's always within arm's reach of the president has mystified people for decades and has become a symbol of both the president's great responsibility and a symbol of a bygone era that some believe should be cast into the history books. So what exactly is the nuclear football? For starters, it's not shaped like a football at all. The device is an all-aluminum case that's placed inside a black leather bag. The bag itself is carried by a military officer of at least the 04 pay grade that serves as an aide to the president. Indeed, the aide is always with the president whenever he's out of the White House. No matter whether it's a trip to meet foreign dignitaries at high-level conferences, fancy hotels, or even just a trip to get a pizza, the military aide will be right by the president's side. Just why the presidents have a nuclear football in the first place actually arose during the Kennedy administration at the height of the Cold War. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, where both the US and Russia were probably within days, if not hours, of nuclear war, Kennedy realized that the situations in which nuclear weapons might be needed could develop so quickly that something that allowed the president access from anywhere in the world was needed. Additionally, President Kennedy wanted a system whereby the proper command authorities and troops launching the actual missiles could verify the president's identity. After all, one would not want an imposter giving false orders to annihilate the whole world. Kennedy also wanted a way that he could quickly meet with his top command advisors to make the most informed decision possible. Hence, the nuclear football was born. Though the device has been around since the 60s, there are a great number of misconceptions about the device. The first one is that there was only one of them. In reality, there are actually 3 nuclear footballs. The first one always stays with the president, the second one is always with the vice president if the president becomes incapacitated. The last one is actually a spare that stays at the White House. Contrary to popular belief, there is no magic red button that the president can press and rain hellfire on anyone in the world. Rather, it's a little more complicated than that. If the president decides to launch nuclear weapons, once he or she opens the briefcase, the president will be greeted with rather impressive communication equipment and official documentation. When the president wants to give the order to strike, the first thing that'll happen is the aide will take the president aside and help lay out all the documentation for him or her. After establishing secure communications with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the top military officers from each branch, the president will decide whether to meet in the Situation Room and continue the strike via secure telephone conference. Once positive communications have been established with the command authority, the president must establish his or her identity. The way this is done is through the so-called biscuit. The biscuit is a small, laminated index card that the president also carries on his body. It's a response to the challenge posed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's typically a 2-letter response to a 2-letter challenge. For example, the challenge would be Delta Foxtrot, and the response could be Echo Bravo. Those codes, which are classified to the highest level possible, must be correct or the strike will not continue, since the president cannot verify his identity. Once the president's identity has been verified, the president will quickly discuss the situation and the possible response to it. While certainly nuclear options will be on the table, the generals and admirals could convince the president to take another course of action. If they cannot convince him to agree, the order will continue through a series of secure encrypted messages sent to the units responsible for the firing. To decide what kind of response the president wants, there is a literal black book inside the briefcase. This book contains a pre-planned list of responses to a number of attacks. The best way one former aide could describe this list was sort of like picking from a Denny's menu, where the president could assemble a nuclear attack by picking options from each column. Also contained within the Black Book is a super secret list of safe houses within the United States. No matter where the president's traveling, he or she can find somewhere to hunker down while giving this command. Once the encrypted orders have been sent out from the Pentagon, the firing units then receive them and decrypt them. For land-based nuclear missiles, silo teams take the encoded pre-planned responses and compare them to the coded messages locked inside a safe. At all times, at least 2 people must be present when opening the safe and decoding the message. After the message is decoded, it's put up to a vote by the silo team to fire the missiles. 5 keys must be turned simultaneously to fire the missiles, but only 2 of them must agree to fire. For missiles based on a submarine, the initial decoding is quite similar. The order must be retrieved with at least 2 people, and the commanding officer, executive officer, and 2 department heads must decode the message. Only a unanimous vote amongst all 4 officers that the message is authentic and legal will allow the strike to continue. Though this seems like a tremendous amount of power to be in one person's hands, and there can be no doubt that this is, it's not the ultimate godlike authority that some people claim the president has in this matter. The reason for this is because despite what some people say, there are checks and balances in place, though not what they're used to for civilians. The president serves as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and as such, a civilian who controls military members are subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the regulations of their respective services. Though people would be correct in stating that there are no civilian checks and balances, since not even the Vice President or Secretary of Defense can veto a legal launch order, there are balances within the military hierarchy. The first balance comes in the form of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
All right, we'll stop it there. That sound pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Interesting. It's quite amazing how much stuff is online these days to find out about. Are you shocked at that, by the way?
No, not really. I mean, there are some things in there that aren't accurate, and I'm not going to point them out. But it's pretty good.
Pretty good, huh? All right. Well, as we get ready to wrap, let me ask you this. Why does it come down to 6 minutes? She makes a big deal in the book about we're at a point, I guess it's about 30 minutes for this ICBM. I guess depending on what we're talking about, what kind of missile, one could be an hour, but she's got this one down with a long-range ICBM at about a 30-minute from launch to target. Why are we at 6 minutes for the president to make a decision? Why did she choose that in her scenario?
We work these timelines on worst case scenario, and you mentioned the part of the timeline early in our conversation about the missile defense system not seeing a missile out of North Korea for 8 minutes. So you have to break that 30 minutes. We used to brag, the missile guys in the Air Force used to brag, just call us, just like you call Domino's, because we'll get it there in 30 minutes or less. That's true, but that 30 minutes has to be broken up when you're talking about the United States president having enough time to do a couple of things. Get located, get briefed on the situation, make a decision, transmit that decision to the forces, and the forces take the actions that they need to do to implement whatever option the president, that all takes time, and all of that time comes off of that 30 minutes. So when you get down to the bottom line is, in order to get because remember, our defense is our ability to strike them if they launch at us. So we have to get our launch done before our missiles, especially the land-based ICBMs, and our bombers are destroyed. So you have to have enough time to launch them to get them out of the way before the incoming missiles come in.
And that doesn't happen, and apparently that doesn't happen in 2 seconds. So his 6 minutes is based on giving the order and then the time frame for the people to validate and go through these processes we're talking about to be able to get our missiles out of the silos before they're targeted and can't even get out.
Yeah, and I stood nuclear alert in Strategic Air Command from aircraft perspective in tankers and mated up with B-52 bombers. There's a whole host with those things. If they're not in the right status, state of readiness, there's a whole host of things that would have to be done to generate them to be ready for takeoff so that they could survive a nuclear attack. And we don't have the same status that we had in those days, where we had tankers and bombers on sitting on alert, and crews would be right there next to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, waiting on an order. So it's an interesting situation that we're in today. Obviously, the missiles could be gotten out, and our submarine launch missiles are pretty safe too. But they can be tracked these days with detected with the right technology. We know that.
how concerned are you? I know Dr. Peter Pry, the former CIA analyst who, again, we produced his TV show and his weekly radio show. He was very concerned about the nuclear triad, which for the audience, just to remind them, those who maybe don't know, we're talking about your silos, your missiles, your aircraft to get up and give out commands of these codes, and then your submarines that contain the nuclear weapons. So you got your silos, your airplanes, and your submarines. He was very concerned about the nuclear triad and it being targeted, particularly, let's say, if you know where these aircraft are, where they're moving around to the various bases, and the enemies of America, particularly if we got people working with our government, enemies inside our government, giving away this information. I mean, as we're here talking tonight, you know, Matt Gaetz is saying we've got 5 teams, assassin teams tracking on Trump, 3 of them from inside the U.S., 2 from outside the U.S. And I'm sure there are more than that if it came out. But if we have people inside our government that are treasonous doing the things that they're doing, you know, Dr. Pry's concern about information being given out as to where these planes are sitting that are a crucial part of the nuclear triad to give and send signals. Well, if they know where they are at any given time, it's probably a limited options of where those would be. And you bring in a small nuclear device in backpack and you detonate that, you're likely taking out these aircraft still sitting on the ground. And then, of course, you worry about the submarines that hold some of these nuclear weapons that need to be shot off to get those commands. And then he started talking about the Poseidon. This is Russia's unmanned submarine that could have up to, I think, a 200 kilowatt nuclear weapon, 100, 200 had a dial on it. I think you could dial it up. And that would create such a massive EMP that they wouldn't even have to get close right up to the submarine. Just being fairly close and letting it rip, that EMP would help destroy and wipe out that submarine and getting the signals to launch. He went through the whole scenario in one of his shows and his great concern for our nuclear triad. How concerned are you?
Very concerned. You know, there's been moves afoot several times in the last 20 years to remove the airborne, the aircraft part of the triad and just go to a dyad. What that does is it simplifies the adversary's targeting too much. Even though we don't have nuclear bombers sitting on hair trigger alert today, we can put them there, and you can use that step as a message to any nuclear adversary that we see through our intelligence that looks like they may be preparing to do an attack on us. So there's a system of systems inside of the actual weapon systems themselves that is designed to work towards deterring an enemy from ever launching a nuclear weapon on America in any way whatsoever. And to remove the airborne side of the triangle, the triad takes those tools away from a president of the United States because not every option that he considers with nuclear forces results in a nuclear weapon or a bomb or missile being launched.
And then a couple more here and we're going to wrap. How concerned are you that we are at risk of a nuclear exchange? And what would that mean for our country?
Well, I'm very concerned. We did not respond appropriately and continue to not respond appropriately to Russia's increasing its states of readiness for its nuclear forces, especially the strategic level, the ones designed to hit targets in our country and our forces throughout this entire Ukraine war. So the adversary, in this case Russia, doesn't have the right mindset for nuclear deterrence to work effectively 100% of the time, like we had in the Cold War. The adversary, Russia's leadership right now, is looking at the things that we're doing, and it's creating a state of weakness on our part, which puts the thought into his mind or her mind, in this case his, with Vladimir Putin, that, well, maybe I could get away with the use of a tactical nuclear weapon if I needed to. Because the United States has weakened itself. It has not remained on parity with our state of readiness for our nuclear forces. I might actually be able to get away with it. That's the thought that deterrence and all these forces and all these trillions of dollars spent on it is designed to prevent from ever taking place in the adversary's mind. That's why we're at a much higher risk today than we were the day that I called the last aircraft off alert at Barksdale Air Force Base. I called the last tanker aircraft off strategic alert there at the end of the Cold War.
And it hasn't gone back on.
We are at higher risk today of a nuclear confrontation and a nuclear exchange between Russia and America and China and Russia and America than we have ever been during my lifetime.
But you're saying you made the last call to call that group off, to call them back in, and then we're done. And are you saying we should be back to that level again now?
I'm saying that when our adversaries change the status of their forces, we've got to meet it with our forces and do the things that we need to do to demonstrate that we have strong resolve and that the risk is too great for them to make a decision to use a nuclear weapon on us or our allies.
You've mentioned, we're talking about ICBM coming in from North Korea. How concerned are you with a Russian sub, a Chinese sub, an Iranian freighter with a missile on it that has a nuclear warhead, could be shot up over the U.S. off the Gulf?
We've seen the missile box, right? Missile in the box, the shipping containers that have been designed.
The Club K cars?
Yeah, repurposed into missile launchers. Any freighter from any flagged country could have one of those put on it surreptitiously and then operated by remote control without even the crew even being aware of it.
Why? Because I know they can get their command through satellite.
I'm very concerned, and the EMP strike is the first thing that's going to happen. If you haven't ever read the book, 1 second after, you should.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole show on that. And then finally, why has this show been important for the average tax-paying American tonight?
I think it's very important for the American people to understand what's really happening and what they have available to protect them and what its state of readiness is, or its lack of capability is. We've got to be transparent with the American people first and foremost, so they have an understanding of what needs to be done. Because we have some hard decisions to make here. If President Trump does get reelected, there's going to be a call to increase the defense budget. Well, the American people need to understand exactly what that means because we're spending $1 trillion a year right now. What do you mean we need to spend more money on defense? And being transparent with them and being honest with them is the key to being successful in getting these capabilities like a national Iron Dome system made and fielded so that we have an impregnable missile defense and we can cut spending in other areas that we won't have to do anymore.
I recommend everybody get her book, Nuclear War Scenario, Annie Jacobson, New York Times bestseller. It's a really fascinating book. You guys should all read it. This has been extremely valuable. Broadcast Colonel, with your background, your expertise, I can't imagine anyone, Logan and I talked about maybe contacting her, and I said, I appreciate her book, but I would rather interview Colonel Maness because he's actually been there, done that. I mean, I would much rather interview him. No disrespect to her. She did great work and helped me get here. But again, I think between her book and then my being able to do the research with her book to get ready, is, you were the best person for it. And I'm just honored you're on our team every day, 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern at worldviewtube.com. Also robmaness.com, robmaness.com. What's your handle if they want to follow you on X and other outlets?
At Rob Maness on every outlet except for Facebook. It's at COL Robbins.
Excellent. Colonel, as always, thank you for all you do, and thank you for giving us 90 minutes of your time tonight.
Thank you, Brandon. Glad to be with you.
Colonel Rob Maness checking in. Check out his site, robmaness.com. Remember, he'll be a keynote speaker at the upcoming Ozarks Worldview Weekend, live in person, folks. www.tvstore.com for full details. www.tvstore.com. Now, as we get ready to close, we didn't stop one time for a commercial break. Folks, I need your support. If you want us, it took several hours of research for me to read this book, mark it up, get ready for the interview. Then our team had to build all these PowerPoints, collect all the B-roll footage you saw. A lot goes into producing a 90-minute TV special like this. Not to mention, you're looking at many hundreds of thousands of dollars in studio and control room equipment. Folks, I have to have your support. Will you please? Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Giving is down the last 4 weeks. I think it's the economy. I think it's inflation. We're actually increasing in our numbers of people watching. We're reaching more people now than we ever have. But the giving is down. I think it's the economy. And I'm just asking, can you not afford $5 a month? $10 a month. You think that's not important? Nah, he doesn't need that. His team doesn't need that. It's just $5, $10. That's not going to make a difference. Excuse me, it will. Do not underestimate your ability to support us with $5 a month, $10 a month. Because when you add it to everybody else, it adds up. We need your support right now. Please consider going right now to wvwfoundation.com and making a contribution of any size, wvwfoundation.com. I'll be back Sunday night, Lord willing, 8 p.m. Central, as I teach. I think it's going to be lesson 18 or 19 on the book of Revelation. I'm at Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. That's Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central, right here at worldviewtube.com. Again, brought to you by our foundation, wvwfoundation.com. Another way you can support us and support your health is by going to melissahousebg.com. Please get a subscription. Melissa and I have a subscription every month, so we don't miss out on this daily elixir. My hands are not cracked and bleeding. I showed you the other night pictures of my hands all cracked up. Went on for years, bleeding horrifically, hurt, very uncomfortable. And I couldn't get it to quit for years and years until I got on Bella Grace in December of 2023. Nice, clean, healthy hands. This is amazing. The collagen, which is top drawer, peptides cut short so your body actually digests it. So you're absorbing 95% versus flushing 95% of the cheap collagen a lot of people take. Then it's got astaxanthin, which crosses the brain-blood barrier, loaded with antioxidants to fight those free radicals. It's the equivalent of eating 6 salmon steaks in a day. Then it has cat's claw. That's a bark from a vine in Peru, which is an anti-inflammatory. 80 clinical trials on this. Please get a subscription. melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Tonight in the Worldview Report, we talked about all the chemicals and pesticides found in some baby food being sold at major retailers. This is in a lot of our foods, folks, and what's in the air. You know, even the chemicals used for dry cleaning. It's amazing the stuff we're coming in contact with. This is preventative. Bella Grace, I think you're going to see some results for whatever your issues are. This is one of those things that contains glutathione, which is preventative, meaning I think this is going to do something for you, and you may not know it, but if you don't detox your cells, you're going to find out you should have been detoxing your cells. Because this glutathione, studies have shown, can remove mercury from your brain to help prevent dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, not to mention other things. Detoxing your cells in this day and this age is so important. And most Americans, like myself, until I knew about this product, never knew what glutathione was. It's a naturally occurring molecule in your body that starts to decrease around age 20. This is such an important molecule for detoxing our cells now more than ever, with the government compromising and knowingly compromising, allowing our food supply to be compromised. People who've got the shot that are shedding on you, what's in the air, and so much more. Neumi.com/house1, Neumi, Neumi.com/house1. Should an EMP happen, your cell phone's not going to work. Power grid is going to be down. But if you have a satellite phone and you've kept it in like an EMP bag, like a Faraday bag, and you've kept your equipment safe, you're going to be able to use your sat phone to reach out to your other family members who have a sat phone. You can get a free sat phone, free, when you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans at worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Now, maybe you want the sat phone. You're like, I'll go to the expense of the sat phone, but I'm not going to get one to all my kids. But what I will get for all my kids is the more cheaper, less expensive Bivy. Now they just take this device, the Bivy, they sync it to their cell phone, and now you're texting off your phone through the Bivy to a satellite, and that's coming back to your cell phone. So you're able to get text messages, get and receive text messages through your cell phone with your family member who's doing it through this device. Obviously, this is only for texting. This you can text and talk on, but you could be the parent that has the cell phone, the satellite phone with the texting and talk option. Your kids could have a Bivy wherever they're at, college, maybe they're grown adults, your senior adult parents, and they do come in bundles of 2 and 3. So at least you're able to communicate. The grid is down, cell phones are down, are you okay? Yes, we're at home, we're fine, we're gonna stay right here. Good. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd like to know this as quickly as I can versus waiting hours, days, or sadly, weeks. You're gonna wanna be in communication with your family members. A lot of people are picking these up. They also have blankets that protect you from various rays. There's blankets that protect you if you have one of these battery-based cars, whether it's called Teslas. And you don't want to sit there where that stuff's being charged. So I guess a bunch of you heard about that the other night with Tina, the CEO of Worldview Talk, and bought a bunch of those blankets, I guess, to protect yourself from those batteries sitting on them, or your kids or grandkids sitting on those batteries, which is probably not good for you. There's so much there. They have solar generators. I have the Delta 400 solar generator. They have cell phones that do not store your data. All of it is at worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Please check it out, worldviewtalk.com. This is my Gatatana. This is the nightly drink. This is like a plankton. It's in the ocean, and it's a single-celled organism that bypasses your gut, gets right into your bloodstream. One scoop. This is what feeds whales that grow the size of buses. And one scoop of Gatatana has the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. I do the Numi every day. I do the Gatatana every day. And I do the Bella Grace every day. These are the three things I do every day. I do not want to end up in the medical industrial complex. You saw that girl the other night? They wanted to treat her. They made her get 3 shots before they would treat her. Within 10 minutes, she lost her eyesight. And we showed the pictures of her face, the purple, the bleeding. She's been on death's door, and everybody's praying for her. This is what the medical industrial complex did to her. Oh, you want medical treatment? You need to get up on your shots. Here you go. Stay out of the hospitals. And these are my MD friends telling us this right here on this broadcast. Stay out of the system. Prevention, right? What is it, the old saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think I got that right. Well, I do my Gatatana every day. I do my Bella Grace every day. I do my Numi every day. There's a ton of science behind this Gatatana, a ton. BlueGenix.com/Melissa, BlueGenix.com/Melissa. Okay? I'm going to finish this as we go off the air. I won't sit here and have you watch me drink anymore. And I want to thank you for being here tonight. Roll the music. Let's call it an evening. And again, please tell all your family and friends. Tell all your family and friends about worldviewtube.com. You can tell them about that too. Worldviewtube.com. We're going to put the program up online by tomorrow morning. We're going to probably play it a few times over the weekend because this is a fascinating hour and a half. Fascinating. But again, folks, it took a lot of people to put this together. We need your support, either our foundation or buy some of these products, because that's how they support us, only when you purchase them. So please do it for yourself. Support your health and us at the same time. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Weekend Radio with Brannon House.
All right, welcome. Glad you are with us. There is a lot of news, of course, as always. I don't even know why I say that. It's just, that should be a given now, right? But it's not just news in the U.S., of course. It is global news. Lots of global news today. One of them is, we go to worldviewreport.com. That's your daily aggregated news site, worldviewreport.com. The IDF eliminated Ibrahim Agil, head of Hezbollah's operation unit. U.S. already classified him as a terrorist in 2015, offering $7 million for any information on him. He has now been eliminated. Security sources told Reuters that other members of Hezbollah's Radwan force were killed when the Israeli strike hit a meeting that they were attending. Now, things are heating up because this is going on in Beirut, folks. This is going on in Beirut. So IDF conducted a targeted strike of Radwan Force commander and head of Hezbollah operations, Ibrahim Aqil, in Beirut, Lebanon, on Friday, killing the high-ranking terrorist. So things indeed are heating up. We also have over here at worldviewreport.com, your daily aggregated news site. Israeli says 10 commandos of elite Hezbollah unit eliminated in Beirut airstrike. So there you go. This can be seen as a declaration of war, says Nasrallah, as Israeli jets fly low over Beirut. So a lot happening. Aaron was supposed to have gotten on a flight back to Israel from New York. So we're waiting to try to make contact with him when he's back on the ground over there. We'll keep you posted on that. Let's see. I guess we're now finding out. Oh, we have Garland? Well, let's go to that right away. We're joined by Garland Favorito with GeorgiaVoterGA.org. What is Georgia VoterGA.org? VoterGA.org. He's actually at one of the Board of Election meetings right now, and he's going to join us right now for an update. Garland, welcome. We're live on 69 stations of the VCY America Network. Thanks for being with us. I wanted to get you on real quick because there's breaking news that you guys are making some serious progress in the swing state of Georgia for election integrity. Can you tell us what's happening today with the election board in Georgia?
Yeah, that's right, Brandon. We're having a series of rule considerations, and we've got some really good rules. One of them is already passed to reconcile the ballots with the counts, the standard counts, so that we know that the standard counts are accurate. There was a lot of opposition to that. But that is passed.
Well, can I ask you right there, Garland, why would there be opposition to making the books balance, if you will, when it comes to votes? Why would there be opposition to that?
Absurd arguments that it's too late to make any changes, that it will delay the certification if we make sure that the results are actually correct. One of the board members, Janelle King, said it best. She said, look, I want to make sure that the results are right. If that takes an hour, so be it. That's kind of where we are.
All right.
But that's good. We've got more. There's a couple more that have been passed. I'll have to give you a complete report at probably maybe Monday. There's a possibility that we have so many good rules that we might be delayed to finish up everything on Monday.
Wow. So how confident are you then that Georgia now will be a state that we can trust the results?
It's certainly more trustworthy than 2020. We still got a ways to go because we have the machines that need to go. These are unverifiable QR-coded voting systems that U.S. District Court found illegal. The Georgia State Legislature has outlawed them. And, they have all the problems that Mike Lindell's been talking about for years. So that aside, we've put in a lot of protections in regards to the voter rolls and in regards to trying to verify the electronic results.
So how are you feeling not only about Georgia now, but other states, other swing states, Arizona, Maricopa County? How are you feeling about Wisconsin?
Georgia is recognized as doing the most to improve the election integrity over the last 4 years. We are, according to my peers in other states, we're setting the bar right now, thanks to the legislature and thanks to we now have a majority of state election board members who are election integrity minded. So there's still some issues in other states, probably a lot of issues. We're just trying to make sure that we don't have another catastrophic failure like we had in 2020.
What are your thoughts on the outcome of the election? Do you believe, you and I have said before that there are over 100 ways that they can steal the election. And if they want to steal it, they can steal it. Do you believe they want to steal it? Do you believe they are going to steal it?
There's no doubt in my mind that evil forces want to steal the 2024 election. The question is, have we done enough to prevent them from stealing it? We think that we have, but we don't know for sure.
Say that last line again.
We think that we have done enough to prevent them from stealing, but we're not sure.
You're talking about in Georgia, though, only, right?
Yeah, it's right. We are so heads down in Georgia, we have not been able to keep track of all the other states and what they're doing. We know that they're making improvements, but we do know from our peers that none of them have made as many improvements as we have here in Georgia.
So I'm going to ask it again. But let's take Georgia out of the mix. Let's say you've made a lot of improvements in Georgia and maybe you can get a fair outcome in Georgia. Aside from Georgia, do you think enough changes have been made to stop a repeat of 2020?
It's unpredictable, Brandon. I think that the only thing I can say right now, we think we have enough changes to make to stop a repeat of 2020 in Georgia. I really can't speak for the other states. I'd have to do a little bit more research and see where they are. I know there are a lot of pending issues in Maricopa County in Pennsylvania and some in Michigan as well. A lot of concern there. I think Wisconsin has made some improvements, thanks in part to Peter Bernegger and a lot of other activists up there. But, the other battleground states are still at risk right now.
Now, you're going to be with us in studio on election night. We're going to have extensive election night coverage here at Worldview Tube. In studio will be Leo Holman, Garland Favorito, Colonel Rob Maness, all in studio. Roger Stone will be reporting from Trump headquarters, and we look like we're going to have someone else perhaps as well. So we'll be doing extensive coverage on that Tuesday night. We are now being basically pre-programmed. There's the pre-programming going on, that this is going to take days, if not weeks, if not into January before the results are known. What do you think will be the time frame?
No, I don't think that's true at all. Not whatsoever. I think that's a lot of hype. I think we'll know here in Georgia within 24 hours, probably less. We may even know on election night what the results are. So I think that's a lot of hype because people don't want to reconcile the results as we talked about earlier, and they're throwing up this delay argument. But I think that we'll get the results here on time. I can't speak for Maricopa and Pennsylvania and some of the other places that are still very questionable. However, we'll have a really good picture of this on election night because once we're there and we'll be in communication with all of the election integrity advocates in those states. Mm-hmm. So we'll be able to report and we'll know in advance what they've done in detail at that time.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I don't want to keep you because I know you need to get into that meeting. You have some more things that need to be passed today. VoterGA.org, VoterGA.org, Garland Favorito. Garland, thank you as always.
Thank you, Brandon. We appreciate it. Bye-bye.
You too, my friend. Garland Favorito, again, his organization is VoterGA.org, a nonpartisan organization. Make that very clear. That is a nonpartisan organization. They are just simply interested in free and fair and accurate elections. Alpha News up in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area is now reporting that Tim Walz, former National colleague, his National Guard colleague, claims a classified nuclear manual went missing around the time Walz returned from a trip to China. According to Alpha News, Walz's former colleague believes Walz stole the nuclear SOP manual. The colleague says Walz was one of the only people with access to where the manual was stored. Quote, according to the retired soldier, Walz had just returned from another trip to China around the time when the manual went missing, in quote. That's what Alpha News reported. Quote, he alleges Walz was one of the few with access to the building where the top secret manual was stored and was, quote, often the only one there, end quote. That's what the former battalion member believes why they believe he stole the nuclear SOP manual and later returned it. The retired Nebraska National Guard soldier says he is willing to cooperate with the FBI. Well, there you go. I think this audience heard yesterday as Matt Gaetz, the Congress, I don't know, was that out yet yesterday at this time about Matt Gaetz' slogan? I can't remember. Things are running so fast, but yeah, I don't think it was out yesterday for this broadcast, but U.S. Senator U.S. Congressman Matt Gaetz is reporting that his sources that have come to him as a Congress member of the U.S. Congress, that there are 5 assassination squads tracking on President Trump and that 3 of them are from outside the country. We also have reports today that a whistleblower has told U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, I guess I've been saying it Hawley, H-A-W. My phonics doesn't always work, but I guess it's Hawley. I don't know how you get Holly out of that, H-A-W, but apparently you do, but to each his own. The U.S. Senator has been told that Secret Service overlooked, quote, known vulnerabilities, end quote, and allowed attempted Trump assassin to lie in wait on golf course for 12 hours with an AK-47 style rifle and clear shot toward the president. This comes amid reports of 5 assassination teams, I guess I'll correct it, 2 foreign and 3 domestic, reportedly operating as an existential threat on Trump's life. Again, this is coming from the U.S. Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. Now, folks, this is just so odd. Again, we're being almost put in a position where we have to wake ourselves up. I think Ed Dowd put it well in a comment on X today. He writes, never thought 5 years ago the mainstream media would try to normalize working age folks dropping dead and presidential assassinations. As ridiculous as that is, the more disturbing aspect are the rubes who parrot this nonsense because they have the discernment of amoebas. Obviously, no disrespect to amoebas. Very well said. And isn't that the truth, folks? The things that we have become biased to, a normalcy bias, if you will. Hundreds of thousands of military-age males in the U.S., 30 million illegals since Biden got in there, and now assassination attempts. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebg.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you are with us. Now, we will have up online here soon at worldviewtube.com the interview last night. There was an exclusive, it was breaking news and exclusive right here last night on Brandon House Live. And I want to make sure my VCY America audience hears it as well. We will obviously not go into the details now that we did last night because Karen Kingston is not here. But former Pfizer employee Karen Kingston last night broke it right here on this broadcast. She called me and she said, would you like to break a story? I said, always. And here it is, folks. The FDA, this is over at her Substack, KarenKingston.substack.com. The FDA authorized and then concealed a myocarditis experiment. This is like what causes heart damage, inflammation of the lining around the heart. Myocarditis experiment on over 100,000 military personnel using what is known as the ACAM 2000 monkeypox vaccine. So what they did was and she provided us with a full PowerPoint presentation last night, and that'll be posted online here in the next probably 45. It's already up there now. Logan tells me it's already there now. Full interview with her with PowerPoint now at worldviewtube.com. The U.S. military, working with the FDA, gave this shot to 100,000 members of the U.S. military. It is a bioweapon. It is a bioweapon. And the warnings and precautions on the labeling, myocarditis and or pericarditis. This is heart disease and non-ischemic dilated cardioarrhythmia or cardiomyopathy, I guess. Encephalitis, You can even end up with blindness. This is on the warnings and precautions, folks. These risks include risk of severe disability and or death. They are increased in vaccines with cardiac disease, eye disease, and goes on. ACAM 2000 is a live vaccinia virus, vaccinia, VACCINIA, that can be transmitted, listen now, folks, transmitted to persons who have close contact with the vaccinee, and the risk in contacts are the same as those stated for the vaccines. Are you guys listening? Your FDA, your military, our FDA that we pay for with our tax dollars, our military gave this so-called vaccine experiment to 100,000 of our military. And the warnings on the label itself include that you could die, that you could end up with a heart problem, heart disease. But folks, if you come in contact with someone that has had this shot, it's the same as those, the risk are, the side effects, the danger is the same for those who have had the vaccine as those who come in contact with those who have had it. Now, what was it? 2 years ago, 3 years ago? We were showing on my broadcast, we were showing the screenshots from a Johns Hopkins report, and I showed that last week, by the way, again, where they were talking about self-replicating so-called vaccines, self-spreading vaccines that would spread among the population like a communicable disease. Now you've given this reportedly to 100,000 military people? Are they deliberately trying to take down our U.S. military? I think the answer is yes. Now, again, I guess the question is, what about this spreading into the population? Then apparently they went on and they did a study with 24 monkeys. And apparently, according to the report last night, instead of using the data from the 100,000 military guys and gals that were vaccinated, the data didn't turn out so good for that. So they tested the data on 24 monkeys, and they approved this so-called monkeypox vaccine based on the data from the 24 monkeys. This is your government. Again, we have become immune. In many ways, we have become immune to what our own government is doing to us and has done to us. And I'm afraid that much of the population that even knows about this, and that's not a very big percentage, but even the people that know about this, and I would like to ask you this when we open the phone lines. Are you afraid that you yourself, and certainly those of you that have friends that know about this, which is increasingly hard to find friends that know about these things, because sadly many of our friends and family don't want to know about it. But are you afraid that even yourself, that you are becoming desensitized to the seriousness of the nature in which we find ourselves as a country and a nation? Because I have to tell you, I am. I'm becoming far too used to reporting these things. I'm becoming far too comfortable. Is that a good way to describe it? I'm becoming far too comfortable that this is just the way it is and this is what I report. I'm concerned about that for myself because I'm dealing with this on a day in and day out basis, and the things that I'm reporting on, the people I'm interviewing, has made it such, in my mind, that I'm angry, a righteous indignation. I'm angry at what I see happening, but I'm not shocked by what I see happening. I expect it. I'm not shocked by it. That this is the way it is now. So I'd like to ask you in the phone lines, are you also fighting this normalcy bias that I am going to tell you I am fighting? To not become used to this, to not become comfortable with reporting this, do not become where you say, it's horrible, it's horrific, it makes me angry, but this is the way it is. Now, I'm not asking you to lose your mind. I'm not asking you to lose control. I'm not asking you to be afraid. But what I'm saying is the drip, 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 the conditioning. We are under a massive psychological operation. And I think even many of us conservatives, Christians, constitutionalists are not shocked at some of this stuff anymore. And I think that's a dangerous place for us to be. Now that's issue one. Issue two is the fact that we are such a small minority of the country that even knows this is going on. Last night, I interviewed extensively J.J. Carroll. Is that up online yet, Logan? It's loading right now. You're going to be able to go to worldviewtube.com, and you're going to be able to watch my full interview with J.J. Carroll. Now, you guys know he has a new documentary out. He's a former Border Patrol agent. He has a brand new documentary out called This is Treason. This is treason. And he is saying over and over that the largest criminal enterprise perhaps in the world is the U.S. federal government. Now, JJ and I didn't get to know each other until a few months ago. And isn't that interesting? Because he and I were saying the same things independently of each other. I've been telling this audience for years the federal government is far, far one of the most corrupt governments in the history of mankind. And I think for a lot of you, you thought, oh, that's hyperbole, that's over the top, that's extreme. But I don't think you think that anymore, because now we've got enough data to know this is true. And one of them is you have your own government giving this so-called monkeypox vaccine to 100,000 military people they know could kill them, make them blind, give them heart disease, myocarditis, pericarditis, but worse than that, it can now spread to the general population. We also have a report out by a medical doctor, Mary Talley Bowden. Listen to this, folks. $10 billion, 10 billion, billion with a B, $10 billion in taxpayer money went towards COVID social media propaganda. $10 billion. Now, I guess the question is that why Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and the rest of them were willing to censor everybody? Were they being paid some of this $10 billion to censor? Were they being paid also some of the $10 billion to run advertisements pushing this shot, this bioweapon on the American people? $10 billion. And yet, folks, we haven't hardened our power grid from an EMP. What would that cost us? Maybe $1 trillion? And yet, how much have we sent to Ukraine? And yet, we have not hardened our power grid from electromagnetic pulse weapons. COVID Community Corps was launched on the same day. Houston Methodist declared it would be the first to mandate the shots for its 30,000 employees 5 months prior to Biden-Harris mandates. 5 months. Now, I don't know. I have to double check, but Mary Talley Bowden, MD, she may be one of those ones that lost her job, and I think she is. I think she's one of the ones that lost her job the same way Dr. James Thorpe lost his job for standing up to this, for reporting on the injuries. Remember, Dr. Thorpe is an OBGYN that treats about, at the time, 8,000 patients a year. $10 billion. And it was apparently also spread around to a lot of these hospitals and groups. And it was also spread around to a lot of so-called faith-based organizations. By the way, Dr. Thorpe will be one of the many speakers live in person at our Ozarks Worldview Weekend, Friday night, November 1st. and we're going to have Colonel Rob Maness. Colonel Rob Maness is going to join me tonight for Brandon House Live. We're going to do extensive interview about the book I talked about yesterday, Nuclear War, A Scenario by Annie Jacobson. Logan and the team have built us a beautiful PowerPoint. Last weekend, I spent Saturday and Sunday reading. I didn't teach last Sunday night because I was celebrating the birthday of my oldest child. And so I took off the weekend to do that. And I found time on that Saturday and Sunday, since I didn't have to study for lesson, I think, 18 on the book of Revelation, or maybe it's lesson 19 on the book of Revelation. I found time to actually do what I love to do, which is devour books. One of the things is I thought, if they ever throw me in a concentration camp, can I bring my library? Because I'm not going to be in a good condition. I need my wife. I need my family. I want to do my normal job and be free. But if they could at least let me have my library, and I think I might be able to make it to a degree, because I like to sit and read and learn. And I did that over the last weekend. And now I'm going to interview Colonel Rob Maness, who was, as you know, in the nuclear deterrent arena of the Pentagon, helped write the black book that goes into the satchel for the military attaché that travels with that nuclear football. And Logan and the team, I snapped pictures of a lot of stuff last week and said, guys, I need PowerPoint, a whole PowerPoint presentation on these things. So they built that. I saw it this morning. It's beautiful. And tonight I'm going to have on Colonel Rob Maness on Brandon House Live to discuss this very, very serious and dangerous topic, because apparently NATO wants America to get in a nuclear war. But Colonel Rob Maness will be one of the people there in the Ozarks, along with Dr. Thorpe and others, November 1st. Full details, www.tvstore.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk at the top of the hour with host Jim Schneider on 140 stations nationwide, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s. Their network and ministry can be found at vcyamerica.org, vcyamerica.org. Now, in addition to Colonel Rob Maness being there and Dr. James Thorpe, we'll also have with us Leo Holman, Patrick Wood, let's see who else, Sharam Hadian, Andy Woods, Bill Federer. It's quite the lineup. Full details, www.tvstore.com. Oh, Dr. Rob Lindstead, Aaron Lavarco from Israel, who's on his way back now, I think. www.tvstore.com to register for general seating, priority seating, the optional concert banquet on Thursday night, the optional luncheon on Saturday. All those details are there at www.tvstore.com. If you prefer to book your reservation for these events over the phone, all you have to do is call or text Melissa, and she'll leave her a voicemail, or text her. She'll get back to you, 901-825-0652, 901-825-0652. The federal government does not want you to get a hold, at least they didn't, remember, of ivermectin. We were told it was horse medicine. It was dewormer for horses. And yet I have a friend of mine who has an oncologist, and her oncologist is taking ivermectin every week, multiple times a week, as preventative treatment for cancer. He takes some other things as well. I always have a hard time remembering the name of what it is he takes, but it's a powder that he mixes, and it is it called colossum? Is that what it is, Logan? It's the it's what a cow puts off when she's nursing her calf. It'll come to me, and I guess he's taking that. Now, when you have the oncologist, when the oncologists are now the ones that are taking these things as preventative, why aren't we all doing this? Here it is. Yeah, colostrum. colostrum. Colostrum supplement. Now, if her if her oncologist is taking this along with ivermectin as preventative, why aren't we? Some of us are. Some of you are. What's interesting, though, is we were told by our government that this is crazy talk, ivermectin, HCQ. The same government that does not want you to get a hold of ivermectin, and actually in some states like Tennessee passed legislation that we can get it without a prescription. But yet, by the way, remember, some of the pharmacies here in Tennessee still would not let us have it. But that's kind of loosened up now. But the government that did not want you to have ivermectin, despite all the studies that showed how healing and preventative ivermectin can be for many things, is the same government that turns a blind eye to all the poisons in our food. They know what's in our food. They allow it. They're the ones spraying us, by the way, aerosoling stuff. But they want to crack down on ivermectin. Not too long ago, they wanted to have a piece of legislation passed that would have basically made it difficult for people to sell supplements. Now, why do they not want the American people consuming high-quality, good supplements that fight off potentially cancer by fighting free radicals? Why don't they want you healthy? Because it is a big, big, big business for you to be sick. And there is a revolving door from the FDA into the medical big pharma community and back and forth. It's big business for us all to be sick. They don't want you to be well. So they want to regulate out supplements. They want to deny you ivermectin at one point. They want you to take the things that will kill you and make you sick, like the monkeypox and COVID shot. And yet, they know that our foods are filled with poison. Leo Holman has a brand new article out yesterday. 21 toxic chemicals found in baby food sold at Target stores. Poisonous baby food brought to you by the same company that funds Planned Parenthood. See the connection here? That's Leo Holman. The Defender reports that a new investigation led by Friends of the Earth found an alarming number of pesticide residues in baby food manufactured and sold by Target under its house brand Good and Gather. Lab test of two items, the non-organic apple and the pear fruit purees for babies, revealed no less than 21 pesticides, including 12 classified as extremely hazardous to human health. Chemical pesticides were present in 100%. 100% of the baby food samples tested. These chemicals have been linked to birth defects of the heart and brain, learning disorders, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder, damage to the nervous system, and hormone disruption. Now, can I just ask you something here? What really makes me angry in a appropriate biblical manner is how we're being played. You damage these kids, you give them autism, And some of them have autism that is on the spectrum, but you wouldn't really know it unless you lived with them. But it's enough on the spectrum that they don't register or have the fear of consequences like they should. But they had the shots forced on their parents to give to them when they were babies. And any parent that questioned the pediatrician, they were made to feel stupid. And now we know, follow the money, that the average pediatrician's office makes about $1 million or more a year from these poisonous so-called vaccines. And the rate has been skyrocketed since the 1960s. So now these parents, and some of them on the threat of CPS turning them in, some on the threat of, if you don't take these shots, I will no longer be your pediatrician. Some of them are just bullied into it, and the children end up damaged, some severely, some just on the spectrum. Again, you wouldn't know they were autistic or on the spectrum unless you lived with them. But it's enough that for some of them, they don't have the fear of consequences like they should. For some of them, they don't feel like they fit in with everybody else. And some of them then begin, because they don't feel like they fit in, they know something's not quite right, they look for ways to self-medicate due to the fact that they have anxiety disorders, other consequences from the shots. And so they turn to self-medication. Some turn to pot. Some turn to, prescription drugs they get their hands on. Some turn to alcohol. And then some of these kids begin to be involved in petty crimes to come up with the dollars to do these things. And then guess where they end up? Juvenile court. And now you want to talk about a scam. Go into our court system. What a scam. And you know what? Judges, if you're listening, you know it's a scam. Why are you not speaking up? You know it's a scam. This is all about money. It is about warehousing people. It is about court costs, court fees, which is how you judges make your salary. I'm not condemning all of you, but any of you in this system know what a scam it is. You know that many on the left are right. They're correct. Many on the left are right. That doesn't sound understandable. Many on the left are correct. Let's put it that way. Many people on the left have been very correct about this. We need massive reform. But before we can have reform, we have to understand, why is it that we have such an increase in problems with our young people today? And don't tell me, it's because they don't have daddies in the home, because that is the percentage, but that is not the sole reason. There are plenty of children who were not raised in a two-parent family, and they behave themselves, and they go on about life and become productive people, like, Ben Carson, who became a brain surgeon. We are never going to fix the problems in this country until we get to the root causes of why we have this change in numbers. Why there is this spike. And you can't say it's just because, they didn't have a daddy. Something else is going on. Something in the food, the vaccines, yes, the drugs, the alcohol. And then we have many of these kids that are trying to mask their guilt because they have been molested. They've been molested by day camp leaders. They've been molested by school teachers. I mean, you can't hardly read the news every week without finding about a teacher molesting some child. They have been molested by pastors. They've been molested by youth leaders. They've been molested by all manner of people in the religious community, Protestant, Catholic. And then what do? Sadly, many of them turn to abusing alcohol or drugs to numb their conscience and the guilt that they believe is because it was their problem, their fault. So often we see the problems, but we never address the solutions. I don't know why these judges don't take more time to have caseworkers figure out what is going on with each of these individual kids. What is their issue? What is their problem? No, the solution is we don't care. We've heard 1,000 excuses. Throw them in jail unless they have a big, powerful attorney, can pay a lot of money. Other than that, we warehouse them, and then we hire corporations to prepare the food that we feed these people, and we make it the most disgusting food, lacking in nutrition that we can, so that we can have the largest profit for warehousing these people. And we treat them lower than any of us would ever treat our own dog. And then we wonder why they get out and they're more angry, more disturbed, not to mention they've been raped, a lot of them now, in prison, in jail. And the judges and the guards know this goes on. And very few people are ever asking the questions I'm asking, which are, how did we get here? Because we have a federal government that forced these shots onto the public. We had a system that monetized it so the greedy pediatricians would take the money. We set up a healthcare system that makes it difficult for the pediatricians to make a living, so their desperation is not justifiable, but has them then turn to a source of funding, which is push the shots on these kids that is damaging them. We have churches and religious organizations that don't screen people and put people around children that should never be there. And now the Southern Baptist Convention, it looks like they're going to have to sell their headquarters in downtown Nashville due to some of these investigations and costs. Why are we not asking the right questions? Phone lines now open.
Worldview Tube is your place for breaking news and current events. Stay up to date on news that actually affects you. We cover all the bases: politics, economics, current events, Bible teaching, and more. We have reporters all over the world, from America to the UK and Israel. Get the latest updates on the war in the Middle East with on-ground reports from our reporter, Aaron Lavarco. Stay informed on everything politics with our host, Roger Stone. Learn how everything going on today relates right back to the Bible with Brandon House's Bible study on Sunday nights. Stay up to date with the latest breaking news and stories every night on our primetime show, Brandon House Live. Watch our old school 30-minute straight news show every night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. Central Time to get the news you won't hear anywhere else. We are the ultimate uncensored, uncontrolled news source with over 30 years in business. Check out our website and all of our other platforms and apps for free at worldviewtube.com.
Worldview Weekend Radio with Brannon House.
All right, 1-800-347-9829, 1-800-347-9829. So you see, again, 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. Now look, the FDA, or the chemicals, 21 toxic chemicals found in baby food sold in Target stores. And you're telling me the government doesn't know this? And now we wonder again why we have birth defects, why these kids have hyperactivity disorder, are on the autism spectrum, have damage to their nervous system, hormone disruption, learning disabilities. Our government knows this, but our government's running around mandating shots that we should not even be taking, telling us we can't have ivermectin, making it difficult for people that want to offer up good, clean supplements because it's not part of the depopulation plan, or the fact that they make money from the consequences of these things. And most people never think, oh, wow, why are our court systems so jammed up with young people that have such severe problems? Like we can't get through to them. It's like they don't understand reason and logic and context and consequences. Why is this? What's going on? Oh, they're just not teaching the right morals in the school. They don't have a daddy around. Well, those are all reasons. True. But we are too quick. We are too quick to go to the low-hanging fruit of the obvious and say, no, there's more going on than that. And your federal government knows it. And yep, they go after people trying to produce supplements, healthy supplements, keep people sick, while they know full well these toxins are even in the baby food. And they know it, folks. It's all a part of the plan. 1-800-347-9829. Let's go to Sharon, line 1. Sharon, thank you for calling in. What are your thoughts today, Sharon?
Shannon.
Shannon.
Hey,
oh yeah,
Shannon.
Thank you.
Yeah, brother from another mother guy.
yeah. I need to up the number on my reading glasses, to be honest with you. No joke.
Gotcha. Hey, question about the monkeypox here. So it looks like they're trying to engineer this thing to be highly infectious and all that.
Yes.
Is it possible, because they try to get us to believe in evolution that we're so close to the monkey, that now they can make this so infectious and they're going to come back and say, well, we're so close to, genetically like these monkeys, that's why it's transferring to us so quickly?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but that is a very good question.
Let's watch if they throw that one out there.
Well, thank you, Shannon. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Line 2, Bernadine. Line 2. Hi, Bernadine.
Hi, Brandon. I'm so happy I got on because I've been trying, and this is my first time. But anyway, I used to work at a pediatric clinic, and the pharmaceutical representatives would always come in and bring to the doctors these various different kinds of medication that they wanted them to give to the parents. And so now I give you this as a sample, but I also give you a prescription for the same thing, so that now the pediatricians were promoting these meds, and a lot of them didn't really understand all of the impact of the medications in the first place. Because now they had a PDR on their desk where, okay, let me go over here and look at this drug and see what the what is. But a lot of times they would just promote those drugs, give them to the parents, and I'll have to say I was guilty because I didn't understand that it was all a game. And right quick, here in Wisconsin, we're having a lot of hospitals pop up in areas that we never had before. So to me, that's an indication you plan on having a lot of sick people, because we've never had medical facilities like this.
Wow, Bernadine.
And they're still being built.
I'm so glad you called in, your first-time caller. Thank you. Let me ask you this. Bernadine, did you know that a lot of these pharmaceutical reps, that when these doctors push a certain volume, that they then get all kinds of high-end VIP free trips to warm places during the winter?
At that time period, they were getting financial kickbacks to these clinics for you promoting these medications to the family. And the clinic I worked in was not only pediatrics, but it was adults as well. So they were coming in and hitting us on both ends, adults and children.
Wow.
But I knew that the doctors were getting kickbacks from the pharmaceutical, but I didn't have an understanding of the bad side of what all of that really meant. And I'm talking the 70s, because my daughter was born in 1970. And so my children were also going to that clinic that I worked at. So that's just how far back I recognize all of this was going on.
Wow. Bernadine, great caller. Thank you for being a first-time caller. I hope you'll call back in.
I will.
Thank you, hon. Let's go to Barbara in Kansas, line 3. Hi, Barbara.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I thought you might be interested to know that Mary Talley-Bowden, the doctor you spoke of earlier, she sued the FDA and won over ivermectin for her patients.
Wow.
And she will be speaking at the CCH Freedom Banquet. It's at the annual gala. It's for CCHfreedom.org. That's Twyla Brace's organization that's fighting for freedom for patients.
Okay.
And she'll be speaking October 3rd.
I just brought it up. There it is. Look at that.
Yes.
There it is, right there. I'm going to bring it up here. October 3rd, 2024, CCHfreedom.org. CCHfreedom.org. And this is going to be, it looks like in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Correct.
Oh, that's the Hilton Hotel. That's the one we used to use. Yeah.
Okay. But I thought your listeners might be interested.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them would be. I'm so glad you called us.
They're calling it Physician on Fire.
Yep. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, because I know a lot of our audience would be very interested in that. And thank you. You got a 5:30 VIP reception, and then the program ends around 9 o'clock. I guess it gets really underway at 6 p.m. So again, there you go. CCHfreedom.org. All right. See, we're team players. We're team players. What else do we got here? I know I got to find my call screener again. There we go. Let's go to Barbara in Kansas. No. We just did. David in Florida, line 1. David. Hi, David.
Hey, Brandon. How's my wonderful Christian brother doing this evening?
I'm doing great.
Today, rather.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, listen, there's one verse in the Bible that just keeps speaking to me, and it says, when Jesus was talking to his disciples about the signs of the last days, and he says that because of lawlessness, or another translation says because of wickedness, the love of many will grow cold. And I thought, that really speaks to me, because I think to myself, what does that look like when somebody's love grows cold, even a believer? I think, well, that looks like depression, that looks like fear, that looks like anger, that looks like anxiety. And I think it's really important. Maybe you could speak to this. How we need to.
I think it also.
I think it
also. Well, we'll have to pick it up later. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. And that does it for this edition of Worldview Radio on those 68 stations. Let me just go back to what David was saying. The love of many will grow cold because of wickedness. And I think, of course, if we look at that in context, we have to understand that could be many things. And I'm going to go study that verse a little more now that he's brought it up. But, what is one of the great commandments? Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. And as times become more and more wicked, what naturally seems to happen is what we're talking about today. People become callous, they become jaded. And as they become callous and jaded and things get worse, they don't really notice the affliction or the suffering maybe of their fellow man or neighbor. The problems of your fellow neighbor, they seem kind of trivial in comparison to the fact that we have World War III on the horizon. The problems of your neighbor, or the shut-in, or the widow and the orphans, the single mom, those problems of hers may seem, those are trivial compared to the people that all have turbo cancer now. Those seem trivial to the fact that we have invaders in our country raping people, taking over apartment complexes with semi-automatics and scopes. So as the wickedness abounds, maybe again, the love of many grows cold, not only because they're being affected by the culture, they've become a part of the cultural stream. And part of the wickedness is what? Selfishness. What is one of the greatest sins, obviously? Pride, selfishness, pride. And when you're selfish and prideful, you don't really have a concern for other people. And that may be explaining why, for many of us, when we even go out to the grocery store, we're finding that people are not as friendly as they once were. That people seem to be kind of shut off, isolated, self-isolating. It's very sad times for many, because many of us who've lived in the United States, born and raised here long enough, have seen what is this massive transformation that's taking place. And some of you have described it to me as grieving almost for the death of a loved one or a friend. Watching the collapse of America, watching the demise of America, many of us find ourselves in some ways almost grieving as we would for the loss of a family member or friend. Something that was good, comfortable, is gone. And it is sad. I don't think our young people understand that. I don't think a lot of our young people today, because they didn't live at a time that we're talking about. They didn't live at a time of real innocence. I know that in the 1980s, graduated from high school in 1988, I'm sure my parents' generation didn't think it was much of a very innocent time. But in many regards, it's relative from one generation to another, right? But when I look back at what was going on in the 1980s, how innocent it was. But then you go back and you look at the 1960s, and you look at the 1950s, and you look at the movies and the films, and you find out, wow, it was so innocent. And of course, you go back and you think about the fact that in programs like I Love Lucy, Ricky and Lucy couldn't be seen in the same bed together. They were in twin beds. They tried to hide her being pregnant. That was not considered something that'd be parading around a pregnant woman. They would often hide her with pillows and whatnot behind the furniture. The word pregnant, they didn't want to use the word pregnant on television. It was a different day and a different time. Now, can you believe the things that come over the airwaves as far as what people talk about openly in public? Yeah, the times are becoming more and more and more evil and wicked, and it does start to influence the whole culture and their love for their fellow man and their tenderness and compassion toward their fellow humans decreases. Not to mention their love of what is naturally in their heart and their mind, their conscience. Because even the unbeliever can love goodness. Even the unbeliever can love things that are good and true and honorable and upright because of the moral law placed in their heart and their mind, their conscience. Even if they're not Christians, they can have a love for what is good and right and just. But as evil abounds in a culture and people become more and more comfortable with it, their own consciousness and their own morals and values become more compromised. It is a cultural rot that really happens from within. And that's really what's happening, isn't it? I mean, I know the Marxists want to bring us down, the Islamists bring us down, but if they just left us to our own devices, it's going to happen naturally. We're going to collapse from within just like Rome did. Well, tonight I am going to have on Colonel Rob Maness, Brandon House Live, and we're going to go through this book, Nuclear War: A Scenario by Annie Jacobson. We have a very, very beautiful, professional PowerPoint presentation, keynote presentation the guys in the control room have built. And we're going to be really educated by a guy that was on the inside writing the nuclear football manual that goes with the president in that nuclear football. What we're going to do, I don't think many outlets get to do. So this is going to be a rare opportunity for you tonight. 7:30 Central, Brandon House Live, worldviewtube.com. Tell your friends. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may God save America. Take care. Today is Friday, September 20th, 2024, and here we go. Gold breaks $2,600 barrier as Fed cut bets prolong historic run. We'll talk about some of these with the Bad News Bears. Kamala Harris tax plan could cost us nearly 800,000 jobs. Well, that's the goal. That's the goal. Remember, Build Back Better. To build something back, you got to destroy it first and then build back. And the better to them is a communist state for Comrade Kamala and Creepy Tim. Trump keeps hammering Fed over rate cut. It was a political move, says Trump. Kamala-omics, robbing the future to appease the present. Market declines and the problem of time. Woo, that rhymes. Gold hovers near record high. Here's where analysts say it's headed next. FedEx, that's right here in my town. FedEx earnings miss could signal a slowing economy. Wow, these people are real geniuses, aren't they? The U.S. economy could hit a double whammy on September 30th if two major negotiations are not hammered out. And JP Morgan CEO warns of U.S. economic crisis as BRICS power grows. Joining me now are the Bad News Bears, Michael Weiner, Wes Peters. What plans do you have for this? Oh, wait a minute. I don't need to ask. Michael's going golfing. Michael's going golfing.
Hiking and then golfing.
Hiking, then golfing.
Hiking and then golfing.
Biking, then golfing. You are Jack LaLanne. Was that his name, Jack LaLanne?
That's correct.
Did you know who Jack LaLanne was, Wes?
I sure do. Yeah, he was a power lifter, bodybuilder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's the Jack LaLanne of this generation.
I knew him, and I also knew like Hercules. I met him many years ago.
Did you really know Jack LaLanne? I'm sure Wes made his glasses at
No, I used to really watch his TV show. Made his glasses.
I bet you did. Michael made his or Wes made his glasses at Pearl Vision. Is that where he worked?
No, but I had a protein shake with him one time.
You really did?
No.
Okay. I never know when to believe you guys. Where was it you worked? At 1 Minute Glasses?
Lens Crafters.
Lens Crafters, 1 Minute Glasses. What do you need? What color? Here, try these. All right.
An hour.
1 minute glasses.
Go grab lunch and come back. Yeah.
Wes is in charge of all female fittings. So.
Yeah.
Ouch. Are you going to take that, Wes?
Yes.
I can't say what I would typically say probably on television.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so Michael is going to go golfing, and he's going to throw some brand new, freshly minted bullion gold coins on the carpet for the kiddies to play with.
No, they're into platinum.
They're into palladium?
Platinum.
Oh, platinum. Okay.
Correct.
And what are you doing, Wes, this weekend?
I have a cousin and her husband are in town from Michigan, and their son lives in the East Valley, so I'll be fighting rush hour traffic to go over to their son's house for a barbecue this evening. So I'll spend a couple hours with my cousin, and then I also am playing golf tomorrow morning.
Are you playing with Michael?
No, unfortunately, no.
I'm dumped.
I'm done. Is that what you just said?
I'm dumped.
He said he's dumped.
He dumped.
I dumped him. Yeah.
Here you go. I dumped him. I tell you.
How far apart do you guys live from each other?
Probably 40 minutes.
40 minutes? Wow.
Yeah.
He's on the west side. I'm on the east side. He's on the rich side. I'm on the poor side. So
not true.
It's on like a song, the rich side of town. That's West Peters.
Yeah.
You're in what city, may I ask, Michael?
Scottsdale.
Oh, that's the rich side.
Schnottsdale. He's in Schnottsdale.
What side are you on? What side are you on, Mike? Wes?
I'm on the west side in Peoria.
You're all the way over in Illinois?
Yes. Seems like it. Seems like when you drive into the office.
Yeah,
in rush hour traffic with people that don't know how to drive.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I wish you guys a great weekend.
Hey, what are you doing this weekend,
thank you
Brandon?
Thank you for asking.
What
are you?
With all your maintenance people this weekend, Brandon, I think that's really nice.
What is that?
You're having a barbecue with all your maintenance and cleaning people this weekend. So.
No, I'm not. No, we're having a come to Jesus meeting with a few of them. Let's see. What am I doing? I will probably go out and grab a meal with my wife and my oldest son who's in town, and then I guess I got to study mostly Saturday and Sunday to get ready to teach lesson 19 on the book of Revelation, starting chapter 6, verse 1.
All right. Good.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Good stuff.
So there you go. But I enjoy sitting and studying. So to me, I put on a little classical music and I spend the day with about 25, 30 Greek and biblical commentaries. And I love it. So.
Nice. Good.
Nice. Lovely.
You both absolutely can't imagine spending your weekend like that, can you?
Do you sing along? Do you sing along with the music?
Sing with me, won't you?
Sing with me, won't you?
All right, here we go. Are you two clowns going to be at the Ozarks Worldview weekend?
Of course we're going to be there.
Already booked our plane tickets and rooms.
All right. Did you use the code WRLD to get the room rate?
I did.
I used your credit card.
We're going to be shaking hands and kissing babies.
Are you bringing any like black and white PR photos that you can sign and give autographs?
Yeah. I couldn't give those things away.
Oh, we couldn't. We have to pay people. Here you go. Take it down.
Here you go.
Let's see if you bring us up on stage again.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to do that. So are you going to bring any of your free, no obligation packets of information with you?
Correct. We're going to bring
some information.
But he's our helper. He will be out there helping.
Who's helping?
Chris.
Oh, Chris?
He works once a year.
Okay. Ouch. All right.
I almost forgot about that guy.
I did too. I couldn't even tell you his last name, to be honest with you. Huh? I think he works at Swiss America. He's in my phone.
Make sure he sees this clip.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we forward this clip to him.
He's in my phone, but what is his last name?
Agolestos.
Huh?
Agolestos.
Well, that's why I can't remember it. What is it?
Actually, he ran over a javelina and butchered it.
It's Agelestos, Agel.
It's a true story.
Stos.
Oh, wow. I don't. You know what? I have him in my phone as Chris A. That's why.
Yeah.
I could
There you
never
go.
spell or pronounce that last name. But he's a good guy.
Yeah, no, he's a very good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, let's get to the business at hand. Kamala Harris' tax plan could cost U.S. nearly 800,000 jobs. Michael?
Her tax plan is raising the taxes on corporations. And what corporations do at that time is go, okay, who do I get rid of to be able to maintain and stay in business? And they'll cut back and increase the workload for their people that they have and cut back on goods and services. So you're going to get less and pay more. Now, Kamala's going to turn around and say everybody's gouging everybody, but she's very business unfriendly. All of her policies are about literally punishing business. The small business thing she's talking about, she has never done any. She hasn't even had a lemonade stand. She has absolutely no idea of business. All she talks about is like Santa Claus. She's going to give away, but you can't give away when you don't have any money. She doesn't realize her credit card is used up. So what she's doing is she's going to punish the businesses. She's going to hit them with higher taxes. She's going to hit them with something else that when she says she's not going to do anything with fracking, they regulate things to death. They will regulate it out of business. They will regulate businesses out of businesses. And that's what the gentleman said yesterday on television. It was one of the fracking company, and he was CEO of a fracking company. He said, if they do this, if she gets in office, I'm going to have to lay off anywhere from 10 to 20% of my people, and I'm going to